Chapter 2398. Io. The young man raised his head and smiled embarrassedly. He quickly retracted his terrifying aura. In the blink of an eye, he became no different from an ordinary person. The tribulation lightning also lost its target and quickly dispersed. Ling Han was dumbfounded. This young man was definitely a celestial venerable, but he was able to fool everyone. It was too shocking. Vale's eyes glowed green as he scanned the young man. He was completely reckless. However, this young man seemed to have a good temper. He glanced at everyone and smiled. "Hello everyone, I am Zhou Heng. I come from another plane." Ling Han and the others were speechless. A celestial venerable had no temper at all. He didn't even mention his title and just introduced himself. It was too unconventional. Vale frowned. "There's something on his body that blocked my scan." A soldier from the technological plane. Zhou Heng looked at Vale and nodded. "It's very rare. There might not even be one in a few hundred eras." Ling Han and the others were even more shocked. This celestial venerable Zhou Heng seemed to have a deep understanding of many planes. One had to know that the origin world was a cruel world where you fought and I devoured you. What kind of terrifying disaster would a celestial venerable from a different plane bring? "Fellow Taoist, you must be cultivating in a cultivation technique like the mortal world." Zhou Heng looked at Qing Qing with admiration. It's very difficult to take the second step in a super low-level plane. However, fellow Taoist is able to take a different path. This talent is admirable. Ling Han and the others felt like they were in a dream. A celestial venerable was such a powerful existence. They were high above everyone else and would always talk about themselves. However, Zhou Heng called himself fellow Taoist. It was really unbelievable. However, Zhou Heng actually called Qing Qing a fellow Taoist? Fellow Taoist? Hiss. Ling Han and the others all gasped. Was Qing Qing also a celestial venerable? There were only 4 celestial venerables in the entire celestial realm. Wu, Jiu Wu, Feng Qing, and Qinghua. Qing Qing, Qinghua. Qing Qing also looked at Zhou Heng. Her eyes were still blank, but they were slowly becoming clearer. Zhou Heng suddenly let out a soft snort. His voice was like a morning bell, thought-provoking. Ling, Ling Han and the others felt their minds sink, and then they woke up again. It was as if there was something extra in their bodies. They could not tell what it was, but it seemed to give them a new understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Was this a gift from the Sky Sovereign? Qing Qing's eyes instantly became completely clear. Boom! In an instant, a supreme aura flowed out of her body. She was like a god, and mortals could only kneel and prostrate themselves in worship. It was definitely the aura of an Empyrean. Qing Qing, no, Empyrean green flame suddenly released a supreme aura. She looked at Zhou Heng and frowned. She couldn't see through this powerful existence. However, how could a mighty celestial exalt fear anyone? Boom! Azure flames ignited above her head. Even a 9th firmament celestial king would tremble at the sight of it. Ling Han and the others all gritted their teeth. They had actually traveled side by side with a celestial exalt for so many days, and they had even treated her like a helpless little girl and protected her. In fact, Ling Han had even wanted to take her as a disciple. Zhou Heng had said that Empyrean green flame was tempering her heart in the mortal world. She had deliberately suppressed her cultivation, transforming into a mortal and entering the mortal world. She would experience all sorts of hardships in order to temper her Tao heart so that she could take the second step. Everyone was a part of the world and possessed the power of the world. It was just that mortals were mediocre and unable to use it. Everyone was a treasure trove. "Who are you? Where do you come from?" Empyrean green flame asked. However, she still had the appearance of a 7 or 8-year-old girl, and her voice was young and tender. It was a huge contrast. Celestials could not be tolerated by the world. Bolts of lightning struck down, targeting Empyrean green flame. However, to a celestial exalt, this was naturally nothing. She didn't even need to dodge or parry. Zhou Heng smiled slightly. "I have no enmity. My goal in coming here is very simple. I want to invite powerhouses like fellow Taoist and young elites to a transcendent grade plane." To a transcendent grade plane? May I ask, my lord, what is a transcendent grade plane? A plane that is stronger than a higher grade plane? Ling Han gathered his courage and asked. He felt that this celestial exalt was very easy to talk to. His personality was similar to his. As long as one didn't cross his bottom line, he was really easy to talk to. However, if one did cross his bottom line, then he would be more ruthless than anyone else when it came to killing people. Zhou Heng nodded. There are a total of 4 transcendent grade planes, but now there is only one left. His expression was a little heavy. Everyone was astonished. The essence of a planar war was devouring. Logically speaking, there were only 4 transcendent grade planes. Now that there was only one left, the other 3 had naturally been devoured by this one. It should be invincible. What were you worrying about? Zhou Heng smiled. All right, I'll explain it from the beginning to help you sort out your thoughts. This celestial exalt's temper was indeed very good. The entire origin world is like a snake. The planes are arranged in order, from strong to weak. The old planes will slowly move towards death, and new planes will be born. It is an endless cycle, Zhou Heng said. He thought for a while, then said, rather than saying it is a snake, it is more like a Tai Chi, the cycle of life and death. A long, long time ago, each plane in the origin world was completely independent. There were no connecting points, and they did not interfere with each other. Of course, there were no planar wars. However, at a certain point in time, the people of an old plane were not willing to let the plane collapse and turn into nothingness. Therefore, they created a powerful living creature called frenzy. The essence of frenzy is to devour. It extracts the energy of a plane to replenish the old plane. Relying on frenzy, this old plane struggled at death's door for hundreds of eras. However, frenzy absorbed too much power of heaven and earth, becoming stronger and stronger. The people of that old plane could no longer control it. Therefore, the old plane became a victim of frenzy and was devoured by it. Frenzy began to endlessly devour planes, constantly growing stronger. In the end, it became a plane itself, and it was also the strongest plane. According to the rules of the origin world, it was ranked at the top. It was still devouring, but behind it were 4 powerful supreme planes with countless experts, which slowed down the pace of its invasion. However, after countless eras, the 3 supreme planes were all devoured by frenzy. The supreme experts of those 3 planes all retreated to the last supreme plane and joined forces with the experts of the 4th supreme plane to fight against frenzy. Even so, we're still at a disadvantage. If this goes on, one day the last super-grade plane will also fall. When that time comes, the entire origin world will be engulfed in chaos and fall into eternal darkness and chaos. Under such circumstances, the origin world was forced to save itself. It started a planar war in an attempt to create more supreme planes. Everyone was tongue-tied. So this was how planar war came about? The goal was so noble, to fight against the destroyer of the entire origin world. Ling Han was puzzled and he asked, why do we have to create more super-grade planes? Zhou Heng smiled. Because the higher the realm, the higher the need for the plane to unleash its combat power. For example, if I unleash my cultivation base, the heaven and earth will be very powerful. Either the heaven and earth will suppress me, or I will shatter the heaven and earth. I don't know who Zhou Heng is. I can go and supplement sword moving 9th heaven. Chapter 2400. The youth from the sealed emotion hall let out a long howl. Soon, 2 powerful existences came over, their bodies shrouded in splendor. Immortal kings, one was at the 3rd firmament, while the other was at the 5th firmament. They were rather impressive. The 2 immortal kings first scanned the crowd. They were mainly looking for heavenly venerate Joyless. That lord was truly terrifying. He had made a name for himself in a single battle. Yes, he wasn't here. The 2 immortal kings heaved a sigh of relief. It was fine as long as he wasn't here. The 3rd heaven celestial king looked at Ling Han, and a sinister smile spread across his face. Ling Han, do you think that you can act as you please just because the heavenly venerable Bu Lu has spoken? You dare to barge into my sealed emotion palace? You are seeking your own death. Under normal circumstances, no one would dare disobey a heavenly venerate's orders. However, Ling Han had barged into the sealed emotion hall. If they didn't kill him, how would the sealed emotion lineage maintain its reputation? This was a bottom line that could not be breached. Ling Han smiled. I accompanied the two lords here to discuss something with heavenly venerate Joyless. Hurry up and report it. How dare you? The third firmament immortal king rebuked angrily. He reached out to grab Ling Han. He didn't dare kill Ling Han, but he didn't mind capturing Ling Han and handing him over to heavenly venerate Joyless. Everyone should be amicable. There's no need to resort to violence. Zhou Heng smiled. He extended his hand and easily grabbed the third firmament immortal king's wrist. The third firmament immortal king was first taken aback before a look of disbelief appeared on his face. He hadn't sensed Zhou Heng's wrist grab at all. How great was the difference in strength between them? The fifth firmament immortal king was also alarmed. Zhou Heng didn't reveal any domineering aura, but his attack was so shocking. He couldn't believe it. Zhou Heng's strength was even above his own. He hurriedly sent out a signal to summon stronger reinforcements. Coincidentally, the strongest expert of the sealed emotion lineage had come today. Imperial Void Immortal Kinjin. Just a short while, a terrifying aura surged as a supreme expert arrived. The Imperial Void Immortal King was practically the #1 person beneath the heavenly venerables. Ling Han? The Imperial Void Celestial King's eyes involuntarily narrowed. A mere ascending origin tier cultivator was actually able to make even a heavenly venerable feel like his hands were tied. Ling Han was definitely the first person in history to do so. Back then, he had wanted to take the magic cube of origin from Ling Han, but he had failed. This was something he couldn't let go of. Ling Han was probably the only person who could be remembered by so many ninth firmament immortal kings and heavenly venerables. The Imperial Void Immortal King was just about to show his might when his gaze swept past Empyrean Greenfire, and his expression immediately turned cold. Others didn't recognize Empyrean Greenfire because they didn't have the qualifications. But as the most outstanding disciple of Feng Qing's bloodline, how could he not recognize this person? He quickly bowed respectfully and said, "Greetings, Lord Greenfire." Puff, the two immortal kings from before, instantly choked. What? That little lass was actually Empyrean Greenfire? How did she come back? Wasn't Empyrean Greenfire in the same camp as Feng Qing and Jiaowu? Why was he standing with Ling Han now? Empyrean Greenfire naturally couldn't be bothered to explain. She couldn't even be bothered to pay attention to the Imperial Void Immortal King. In any case, Zhou Heng was the one calling the shots here. Seeing Empyrean Greenfire's attitude, the Imperial Void Immortal King and the others were stunned. Could it be that Empyrean Greenfire had sided with Heavenly Venerable Wu Lu? One had to know that Feng Qing and Jiao Wu, two great Heavenly Venerables, had to team up to oppose Heavenly Venerable Wu, so Empyrean Greenfire's choice was decisive. Whichever side he sided with, that side would have the upper hand. Greetings, Lord Greenfire. The two Immortal Kings hurriedly bowed. They didn't have the Imperial Void Immortal King's dominance and pride, so how would they dare to merely bow? They knelt on both knees and paid their respects. That young man was also terrified. He actually dared to shout at a heavenly venerable. Just how tired of living was this? He prostrated himself, bowing and apologizing to Empyrean Greenfire. Empyrean Greenfire finally spoke. Feng Qing, come out. Hee, Taoist Greenfire, why didn't you inform this Empyrean earlier that you were coming here? This Empyrean could have prepared some refreshments to properly entertain you. Amidst a long laugh, Empyrean Feng Qing appeared. She was handsome and spirited, yet cold and emotionless. Empyrean Greenfire snorted and pointed at Zhou Heng. He has something to say to you, not this Empyrean. Empyrean Feng Qing was surprised. Hearing Greenfire's tone, she seemed to be very wary of Zhou Heng. But one had to know that the Immortal Realms originally had 3 Empyreans. Now there were 4, there would be no 5th. What did an Empyrean have to fear? He focused his gaze on Zhou Heng, his gaze filled with doubt because he really couldn't see what was so special about Zhou Wu. He was ordinary and unremarkable. The Imperial Void Immortal King stood out and said, Who are you? If you have something to say, just tell me. If an immortal king directly spoke to Emperor Fengqing, wouldn't that be disrespecting Emperor Fengqing? Hence, as a disciple, he had to stand out. Ling Han also stood out. If a celestial king didn't have the right to speak to Emperor Fengqing, then did the Imperial Void have the right to speak to Zhou Heng? He smiled and said, Imperial Void, how can I tolerate your disrespect in front of Senior Zhou? The Imperial Void Immortal King couldn't help but be furious. A mere ascending origin tier actually dared to directly address him by name. To say nothing of him, even the majority of celestial kings would have to respectfully address him as Lord Imperial Void when they saw him. There were 9 heavens of celestial king tier, and each step was a step up to the heavens. This was no joke. I will discipline you in place of Lord Wu Lu. He stretched out a hand to grab at Ling Han. No matter what, he had to make this brat suffer a little. Zhou Heng smiled faintly. His eyes widened slightly, and a flash of sword intent slashed out. A supreme aura circulated, and the heaven and earth instantly moved. Thunder clouds surged, and a great tribulation descended to wipe him out. The Imperial Void Immortal King paled in shock. This was definitely the might of a heavenly venerable. Holy, holy, holy. Since when had a 5th heavenly venerable appeared in the celestial realm? Fuck, could it be that Ling Han was the representative of a heavenly venerable? Whenever he appeared, he would always bring along a heavenly venerable. Fellow Taoist, please calm your anger. Emperor Fengqing hurriedly moved, blocking Zhou Heng's attack. Bang! The 2 heavenly venerables clashed, and Zhou Heng smiled faintly. He quickly retracted his heavenly venerable aura, and became no different from an ordinary person. Emperor Fengqing's feet trembled as he retreated continuously. With every step he took, the heaven and earth groaned, as if it was unable to withstand it and was about to collapse. When they saw this scene, the Imperial Void Immortal King and the others were all speechless, and even their bodies were trembling. Emperor Fengqing was actually not a match for Zhou Heng. Moreover, it was not as simple as being at a slight disadvantage. Instead, he was completely not a match for Zhou Heng. The difference was far, far too great. Hiss, there was Emperor Wu Lu before, and now there was this person. Were the heavens going to be overturned? Emperor Fengqing's expression also changed greatly. He took a deep breath and said, Who are you? I am Zhou Heng. Zhou Heng was still modest. However, excessive modesty was arrogance, especially after he had already revealed his terrifying strength. Fellow Taoist Zhou is a 6th-step heavenly venerable. Emperor Green Fire finally spoke, but the moment he spoke, everyone was almost scared to death. A 6th-step heavenly venerable. Such a powerhouse would be completely invincible even if he went to the foreign realm. In fact, he could even forcefully destroy the foreign realm. He was a truly supreme existence that had transcended. Emperor Fengqing was both shocked and puzzled. How could such an existence be born in the celestial realm? An ultra-low-level cultivation plane was not enough to support him at all. It was more refreshing to read on one's phone. Chapter 2401. Even heavenly venerable Fengqing was shocked for a while before regaining his composure. He bowed again and said, Greetings, Tao Brother Zhou. A 6th-step heavenly venerable was indescribably strong. Zhou Heng still had an expression of, I didn't do anything. He smiled faintly. I have something to discuss with you all. Please enter the hall and take a seat. Heavenly venerable Fengqing smiled. He was very calm. If Zhou Heng wanted to deal with him, there was no need to go through so much trouble. A 6th-step heavenly venerable was too strong. Zhou Heng nodded, and everyone entered the sealed love hall. Invite the other 2 over. Zhou Heng's body shook, and 2 phantoms that looked exactly like him walked out of his body. The 2 phantoms tore space apart and left. After a while, 9-5 and heavenly venerable Joyless tore space apart and arrived almost at the same time. Their faces were still filled with shock. This was very natural. Anyone who saw a 6th-step heavenly venerable would feel their scalp tingle. Zhou Heng was obviously not someone who liked to talk nonsense. He directly stated the purpose of his visit, which surprised and delighted 9-5, Heavenly Venerable Feng Qing, and Heavenly Venerable Joyless. What surprised them was that the transcendence they yearned for was just a flower in the water. Perhaps it could be realized, but it would soon shatter. There was actually a monster-like frenzy. What delighted them was that once they entered a super high-grade plane, they would have the opportunity to become a second step, third step, or even sixth step or seventh step Heavenly Venerable. To be able to become a Heavenly Venerable, which one of them was not talented. After Zhou Heng finished speaking, not only did the 9-5 Heavenly Venerables look moved, but even the Imperial Void Immortal King and the others were no exception. They all longed to enter a stronger plane, which would be of great help to their growth. Announce it to the world. Soon, the 5 Heavenly Venerables reached a consensus. They announced to the world that they would select the most outstanding talents to head to a super high-grade plane together. Such a trivial matter did not require the Heavenly Venerables to do it themselves. Naturally, their disciples would do it for them. When the news spread, the entire celestial territory was shaken. Of course, the 5 Heavenly Venerables did not reveal the news of frenzy. They first talked about the planar war, and then said that they would bring people to high-level planes to expand everyone's development limit. Countless geniuses appeared, all of them heading towards the gathering points set up by the great celestial kings. Those with outstanding talent could be brought to the Tao rites of the 4 great celestial kings, and it would be up to Zhou Heng to decide whether or not to take them away. Ling Han, Ji Wuming, Shi Chanzi, and the others were all summoned by Zhou Heng. This Empyrean was extremely important to them, and he had something to say. Although you can also become an immortal king in a super high-grade plane, I hope that you all can become an immortal king here before leaving. Zhou Heng said solemnly, only when you become an immortal king will you have the qualifications to come into contact with the essence of the laws. This is the foundation for you to understand the power of heaven and earth. Whichever plane one is born in, the easier it is to grasp the laws of that plane. This is your foundation. Zhou Heng paused for a moment and said, the path to immortality here will open in 30,000 years. I'll give you 40,000 years. At that time, regardless of whether you become immortal kings or not, I'll take you away with me. Thank you, my lord. Ling Han and the others said. It was rare to see a celestial so amiable and approachable. Ling Han's heart stirred. He took out the scroll that he couldn't open and said, my lord, may I ask what this is? Wally had only said that it contained the essence of the origin world's power, but he hadn't clearly said what this thing could be used for. A strange scene appeared. At first, this scroll couldn't be opened no matter how hard he tried. Now, however, it glowed with 18 colors, and opened on its own. Moreover, it even broke free from Ling Han's grasp and floated in front of Ji Wuming. It waved slightly as if it wanted him to reach out and grab it. Zhou Heng smiled. This is a plain scroll. Only a specific person can open it. Whoever obtains it will immediately become a celestial venerable. What? Ji Wuming and the others were all moved. They hadn't even become immortal kings, but they suddenly had a chance to reach the heavens in a single step. As long as they obtained this scroll, they could directly become celestial venerables. They couldn't believe it. How could there be such a heaven-defying existence? Moreover, celestial venerables weren't tolerated by the world. Could it be that the world also couldn't tolerate them? However, Ling Han believed it because the scroll contained the essence of the origin world's void energy. In order to protect itself, the world gave birth to the plain scroll, Zhou Heng sighed. However, this kind of power is bestowed by the world. It can be given, but it can also be taken back. Moreover, once one uses the plain scroll to ascend to the celestial venerable realm, their future achievements will forever be limited to this step. Ling Han was enlightened. No wonder the foreign realm had it too. This was the world's self-protection, giving birth to even more powerful experts. However, the world didn't wish for such experts to lose control and disrupt the balance of the world. Thus, this kind of power could be taken back. Moreover, once one used the plain scroll to ascend to the celestial venerable realm, their achievements would also be limited. They could only take one step, unable to transcend. Ling Han couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, He wasn't a person of the world. Otherwise, if he rashly opened the scroll and ascended to the heavens in a single step, he would only be able to dominate the immortal realm. He wouldn't be able to conquer the origin world. However, the world actually chose Ji Wuming and not him. Ling Han felt a little unhappy. Did the world think that Ji Wuming was more qualified than him to be their spokesperson? Ji Wuming closed his eyes. His hands were trembling slightly. Ascending to the heavens in a single step. How could he not hesitate? But after a while, he steeled himself. His eyes opened and they were clear. He shook his head, rejecting the favor of the world. Zhou Heng acted and suppressed the plane scroll. With his strength, he could even destroy the immortal realm's planes. Suppressing this plane scroll was naturally a simple matter. He casually tossed the scroll to Ling Han and then walked towards Ji Wuming, his face full of admiration. Such decisiveness was very rare. One had to know that this was rejecting the chance to ascend to the heavens in a single step. This made Zhou Heng feel very good. Shi Chanzi and the other Emperor Stars were very envious. Although they could become ninth-stage immortal kings, the celestial venerable realm was too difficult to cross. Were there no Emperor Stars in history? But how many had managed to ascend to the celestial venerable realm? After more than a dozen epochs, there was only heavenly venerable fate-born. Ji Wuming had actually rejected it. This made them admire him, but they were also incomparably envious. How good would it be if the heavens favored them? Lord Zhou, there's one more thing I would like to ask. Ling Han spoke again. He told Zhou Heng about heavenly venerable fate-born. May I ask if there's a way to resurrect heavenly venerable fate-born? The other party was a sixth-step heavenly venerable, even stronger than the immortal realm itself. Perhaps there was a way to extract heavenly venerable fate-born's soul and reincarnate. However, Zhou Heng shook his head. Merging with the Tao is irreversible. Not even my master can do anything about it. Everyone was curious after hearing what he said. Zhou Heng was already a sixth-step heavenly venerable, and from his tone, his master was clearly even stronger. Could it be a seventh-step heavenly venerable? Lord Zhou, is your master a seventh-step heavenly venerable? What's his title? Shi Chanzi, Kiran, and the others became curious and asked one after another. My master is indeed a seventh-step heavenly venerable. His surname is Lin, and his name is Luo, Zhou Heng said with a smile, not hiding anything. Lin Luo, a seventh-step heavenly venerable. As for Lin Luo's story, you can go to my other novel, Sweeping the Desolate Universe. Chapter 2402. Seven-Step Heavenly Venerable, Lin Luo. Everyone felt a surge of admiration. A first-step Heavenly Venerable was already strong enough to make heaven and earth jealous. So how strong would a seventh-step Heavenly Venerable be? However, as long as they entered into a super high-level plane, they would be able to see this elite. 30,000 years, they needed to reach the peak stage of the consummate level of the ascending origin tier in such a short period of time, and step onto the celestial path, nurture a celestial seed, and become a celestial king. This was very difficult, because every step in the ascending origin tier was incredibly slow and required a very long period of time to accumulate. A mere 30,000 years, even taking into account the acceleration of the flow of time, was still very difficult. But if they went to a super high-level plane to advance into the Celestial King tier, it was not that it was impossible, but this would affect their future prospects, because they were born and raised here, and the source regulations here were their foundation. Why did Zhou Heng even give them 40,000 years? Wasn't it so that after they became Celestial Kings, they could polish their foundation even more firmly? Ling Han, the Empress, and Hunyou all confirmed that they had the right to head to a super high-level plane, but Zhou Heng had said that he would allow Ling Han to bring a few family members, but not too many, because even if they were a sixth-step heavenly venerable, they could not bring too many people across the plane. You have to bring family, and I have to bring friends, so wouldn't they have to bring more than half of the people of the celestial realm? Thus, the number of people that each person could bring had to be strictly limited. Ling Han calculated, and even including Hunyou and the Empress's quota was not enough. He had to include Wali's quota as well, and only then could he bring all his lovers. When crossing planes, spatial god tools were useless. The terrifying pressure of the plane would crush everything, and without the power of a third step heavenly venerable, even a second step heavenly venerable would be crushed to death. And what about his sons, brothers, friends, and so on? Actually, there was another way to cross planes, and that was through the connecting point of the two realms. Though it would take a very, very long time, it was still a stable method. This had a requirement of strength. Even a heavenly venerable that had just broken through could not do it. At least, they had to be a second-step heavenly venerable that had achieved transcendence, and did not have to depend on this plane. Moreover, this process would take a very, very long time. It wasn't measured in tens of thousands or hundreds of millions of years, but epochs. Zhou Heng was a sixth-step celestial venerable. Even in a super high-level plane, he could be ranked among the top. He was an indispensable combat force. How could he be absent from the battle against Frenzy for an epoch? In the following days, Zhou Heng generously taught Ling Han and the others the true explanation of the Great Tao. Different planes had different rules. It was impossible for Zhou Heng to teach them the techniques of the celestial realm, but he could give them pointers on a higher level. A sixth-step Empyrean, that was more powerful than the majority of the planes. Was this not enough to be a teacher? As Ling Han worked hard on cultivating source power, he also focused part of his energy on alchemy. He was only a step away from the 10th refinement. Now that he had several 10th refinement pills and even 3 immortal king-grade pills for him to refer to, it was naturally of great help to him. Ling Han exerted the time flow on himself. If he used 30,000 years of real time to the limit, it would be at least 30 million years. 12 years later, Ling Han had also passed a long 10,000 years. He finally made a breakthrough in spirit refinement, completing the 10th refinement for the first time. Quang, thunder immediately sounded between heaven and earth. Dark clouds rolled. A great tribulation was forming, and its target was the alchemical pill in Ling Han's hand that had just completed spirit refinement. The 10th refinement pill was produced, and it actually drew out a heavenly tribulation. But the alchemical tribulation was clearly different from that of cultivators. Only a bolt of lightning fell. With a quang, the alchemical pill withstood the tribulation, but a corner was still broken, and a quarter of it was gone. If the 10th refinement pill will draw out a heavenly tribulation, then what about celestial king-grade alchemical pills? Ling Han asked to himself. Since he had successfully completed the 10th refinement, it meant that he was qualified to concoct celestial king-grade alchemical pills. However, celestial king-grade alchemical pills were too precious. Even he only had a few, which was not enough to experiment with. Ling Han was in no hurry to concoct a 5-star alchemical pill. He had not yet advanced into the celestial king tier, so 5-star alchemical pills were not of much use to him. Presently, he only needed to perform more spirit refinement and completely stabilize his ability of the 10th refinement. Then, becoming a 5-star alchemist would naturally be a matter of course. Ling Han decided to act according to his original plan and return to the Eastern Celestial Realm. He set off with his women. This time, Ling Han even brought his parents with him because he had to reunite his mother with his uncle and the others. They arrived at the seaside and prepared to cross the boundless seas. Even if Ling Han had already reached the ascending origin tier, wanting to cross the boundless seas was still a little dangerous. That was because there were celestial king-level giant beasts in this sea, and some could even be traced back to ancient times. Now that Ling Han no longer had the Black Tower, he had lost one of his greatest protective tools. Thus, he had made a lot of preparations. Thankfully, since he had returned to the celestial realm, the origin energy of heaven and earth that he had previously exchanged could also be put to use. This was something that could explode with destructive power on the level of a celestial king, so it was naturally very threatening. Moreover, ascending origin tiers indeed possessed the conditions to cross the seas. As long as they were familiar with the sea route, avoided the territory of celestial king-level great beasts, and did not encounter super large waves, then crossing the seas would not be too dangerous. Ling Han and the others still found a fleet. Though they already had a considerable number of ascending origin tier elites, none of them were familiar with the sea route, so it was still better to find a professional. They bought tickets, and then boarded the ship, setting off towards the eastern celestial realm. Everyone enjoyed the sea breeze at the bow of the ship, enjoying the seascape, and enjoying a rare moment of peace. There were naturally ignorant people on the ship. When they saw that there were countless beauties in Ling Han's group, they wanted to approach them and strike up a conversation. Naturally, they were ignored by the women. Some people sensibly left, but there were also some who thought that they were powerful and wanted to use force. There was nothing more to say, and they were directly thrown off the ship. They were too powerful, and the crew dared not do anything to them at all. Moreover, they had not done their duty. If they could ensure absolute order on the ship, there naturally would not be anyone who would harass the women. This time, they were relatively lucky and did not encounter any large waves. With the old captain leading the way, they also avoided all the dangerous areas along the way. After several decades, the large ship finally arrived at the eastern celestial realm. Ling Han and the others went ashore and first went to Alchemy City. After going ashore, their speed increased. Furthermore, the eastern celestial realm was much smaller than the western celestial realm, but there was no inter-realm transport formation, so they still spent more than half a year's time to arrive. This was also because Ling Han was skilled in the regulations of space. Otherwise, the time needed would definitely be in the tens or hundreds of years. Outside Alchemy City, Ling Han was very moved and said, "We're finally back. Let's go." Hun Yo pulled Ling Han and walked towards the main gates. When the Seat Lord arrived at Ling Han, the guards at the city gates were first stunned and then called out excitedly. Ling Han nodded. Before he left, he had already taken over the position of the Seat Lord of Alchemy City, but the daily affairs were still handed over to Grandmaster Zicheng to handle on his behalf. He entered the city, and very soon, the news spread that the Lord Seat Lord had returned. Instantly, countless people came to welcome him. Ling Han naturally would not pay attention to these people who tried to curry favor with him. Instead, he directly went to the 5th level and paid his respects to Grandmaster Zicheng. "Disciple, you're back. How much money have you earned?" Grandmaster Zicheng asked the moment he saw Ling Han, showing his true character as a money slave. Chapter 2404. Grandmaster Zicheng frowned slightly. Previously, someone from the ancient Pill Tower had come, saying that they wanted to improve the alchemy strength of the Eastern Celestial Realm, but in reality, they wanted to seize power and turn Alchemy City into private property. Now another one came. But he immediately smiled again. Others might not know, but he was clear that his disciple was already a 9th refining super grandmaster. Aside from a 5-star grandmaster, who else could suppress Ling Han? Seizing power in martial art was battle prowess, and seizing power in alchemy was alchemy standard. Ling Han was already in an invincible position, so who should he be afraid of? Thinking up to this point, he did not explode. Instead, he smiled, appearing calm and composed. Though Grandmaster Zicheng did not stand out, there were naturally people who would flatter him. "Alchemist Xie, our city's lord, has just returned, and has even become a 4-star grandmaster. Why don't we have a celebratory drink together?" Xie Yongbing, however, showed a hint of disdain. "I heard that the great alchemy city actually fell into the hands of a brat, so I came. This person is virtuous but immoral." These words instantly caused many people to stand up, glaring angrily. If he did not show his loyalty now, when would he? Xie Yongbing was completely disdainful and flashed his badge. Instantly, a wave of exclamations sounded. 4-star grandmaster, they really did not think that such a young person would actually be a 4-star grandmaster. Even Ling Han was ridiculously young, and the fire of life had only been burning for a few million years. Under the acceleration of the flow of time, the fire of life would also accelerate. Everyone couldn't help but sigh. Now, this world really belonged to the young. With such a flash, at least half of those who had just volunteered to stand up quietly sat down, and it was not that the remaining half did not want to sit down, but that they were being stared at and could not live with their face, so they had to find a suitable opportunity. Lord Ling, Xie Yongbing took in everyone's shameful behavior, but the corners of his lips curled up, showing a disdainful expression. He said to Ling Han, I heard that you are often not in Alchemy City, so how are you qualified to lead this holy land of alchemy in the Eastern Celestial Realm? Everyone was astonished. Xie Yongbing was going to force Ling Han to abdicate in front of everyone. Her intention was naturally very obvious. She wanted to oust Ling Han from the throne so that she could take the throne herself. He was truly ruthless. He alone wanted to take down the Eastern Celestial Domain's sacred land of alchemy. However, as a 4-star Grandmaster and with the backing of the ancient Pill Pagoda, he indeed had the qualifications to be so domineering. Ling Han smiled faintly. I heard that your father isn't home all year round. Is your mother lonely and cold? Xie Yongbing was so angry that her nose became crooked. What business is it of yours whether my father is at home or not? How dare you insinuate that my mother is having an affair? Damn it, damn it. Yet everyone roared with laughter. It was very simple. Since Xie Yongbing did not want others to meddle in his family affairs, then what right did he have to meddle in the affairs of others? Did the affairs of Alchemy City need an outsider to tell them what to do? Moreover, though Ling Han wasn't here, Grandmaster Zicheng was managing the affairs on his behalf, so everything was in good order. Xie Yongbing, you meddle in other people's business. Ling Han, you have gone too far. Xie Yongbing calmed down. He could not follow Ling Han's rhythm and lose his composure. Ling Han smiled slightly. You are a guest, so I did not chase you out. However, if you insist on having a cheap mouth, then I will fulfill your wish. He paused and then said, Guards, please send this big mouth Xie out. Pooh! Hearing the nickname that Ling Han had given him, many people spluttered with laughter. 2 guards walked towards Xie Yongbing. When they neared, they said, Young Master Xie, please. Who dares? A sinister voice rang out. An elder had appeared behind Xie Yongbing at some unknown time. He had white hair and a ruddy complexion, and his skin was astonishingly smooth. He waved his hand slightly. Ping ping, those 2 guards were instantly sent flying by him. Thankfully, he had controlled his strength, and had only sent them flying back, and did not injure them. This brazen move instantly caused everyone to stand up again, glaring angrily at him. The elder smirked coldly. Boom, his aura swept out wildly, incredibly frightening. Descending origin tier, consummate level. When they sensed this aura, everyone's expression changed. Too frightening, consummate level of the ascending origin tier. Invincible below celestial king tier. Though there were hidden talents in Alchemy City, there were definitely no celestial king tier existences, and there were indeed many ascending origin tiers, but those that had reached consummate level could be counted on one hand. How should I address you? An elder stood up. He was the patriarch of the martial art clan of Alchemy City, the Lu clan, and he was at the consummate level of the ascending origin tier. Qian Wui, the first elder, said proudly. What, you want to stand out? The patriarch of the Lu clan smirked coldly. The alchemy and martial arts divisions of Alchemy City shared honor and disgrace, so he immediately stood out. He shook his head. I am only trying to maintain the order of this city, and forbid anyone from being impudent here. When he said the word, impudent, he had already charged out, blasting towards Qian Wui. Trash of the Eastern Celestial Realm. Qian Wui smirked coldly. His figure suddenly advanced, and he delivered a palm strike. Boom, a frightening aura shook the heaven and earth. The 2 great elites immediately clashed in the skies. Hong hong hong. Flames exploded, illuminating this part of the universe. Everyone was unclear. They could only see endless flashes of light, and there were loud booms in their ears, but they had no idea how the battle was progressing, and who had gained the upper hand. They were really too far away from this level. The Empress only took a few glances and then said, He's going to lose. Ling Han nodded. He knew that the Empress was talking about the patriarch of the Lu clan. Though that person was also at the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, his aptitude was ordinary, but Qian Wui was a king tier. King tiers were invincible in other cultivation levels. Though they were not that awesome in the ascending origin tier, at the same cultivation level, king tiers would definitely have a huge advantage. True enough, after a mere 100 or so moves, A figure fell from the skies and landed on the ground with a pring, smashing out a large crater. Who was it? There was no need to go, because Qian Wui had already shot down from the skies and stood firmly on the ground. Then this person that had been struck down had to be the patriarch of the Lu clan. Can't even withstand a single blow, Qian Wui said with a scoff. After blocking 100 or so moves, he naturally was not a weakling, but Qian Wui was the victor, so was there any meaning in refuting this point? There was absolute silence. Though this was Alchemy City, they also worshipped the rule of the strong. Qian Wui was naturally this kind of elite. He was very domineering. One used martial prowess to suppress, and the other displayed invincible skills in alchemy. Added with the name of the ancient pill tower, it was indeed possible that Alchemy City would have a change of master overnight. Grandmaster Zi Cheng's expression involuntarily changed. He indeed had confidence in Ling Han's alchemy skills, but now that someone had come knocking on his door, he naturally could not sit still. Master! Ling Han, however, placed a hand on his shoulder. Let me. How could such a small matter need his master's presence? Ling Han calmly asked. Xie Yongbing, what do you want? Competing with me in alchemy? If you can't beat me, scram. Xie Yongbing said very arrogantly. Qian Wui was a king tier at the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, and he alone could suppress all the elites here, and added with his alchemy skills, the two of them could easily occupy this holy land of alchemy in the Eastern Celestial Realm. Chapter 2405. Ling Han chuckled. Since you want to humiliate yourself, I'll grant you your wish. He also wanted to establish his might, so he decided to compete in alchemy with Xie Yongbing. Otherwise, if he fought, even 100 Qian Wui wouldn't be enough to defeat him. Qian Wui obviously didn't have such self-awareness. In his eyes, Ling Han was only in the ascending origin tier, and he could defeat him with a single finger. Compete in alchemy first, Xie Yongbing said. All right. Ling Han was casual. They didn't enter the alchemy room because Qian Wui didn't understand alchemy. Xie Yongbing naturally didn't feel at ease, fearing that Ling Han would do something if no one was watching. The two pill furnaces were set up on the empty ground, separated by no more than 9 meters. They walked over at the same time, took out their respective ingredients, and began to concoct. There was only one chance, and exploding the furnace was considered a failure, with no chance of restarting. Xie Yongbing was very confident. He was an alchemy genius, and had already become a 4-star alchemist 30 million years ago. His success rate in concocting 4-star alchemical pills was over 90%. Thus, he deliberately chose an extremely difficult alchemical pill to concoct. Gu was an alchemical pill that was almost lost, and among 4-star alchemical pills, it was the 17th most difficult to concoct. He didn't challenge Ling Han. As long as he was also concocting and didn't cheat, it was fine. Of course, he actually wasn't afraid that Ling Han would take out a ready-made alchemical pill, because it was almost impossible to surpass Gu in terms of refining difficulty. The two of them began to concoct, and Ling Han secretly activated his time physique, speeding up the flow of time in the small area where he and Xie Yongbing were. Because he wanted to affect an area, Ling Han only accelerated the flow of time to 100 times, or else the burden would be too great. Just over a day had passed in the outside world, and Ling Han and Xie Yongbing both finished. The pill was formed. The acceleration of time quietly disappeared. Because Xie Yongbing was focused on concocting, he didn't notice this at all. He proudly held the alchemical pill he had just concocted, and said, I concocted a 4-star alchemical pill, Gu. Among 4-star alchemical pills, it can be ranked the 17th most difficult to concoct. Grandmaster Zi Cheng, Grandmaster Tian Xian, and Grandmaster Chu Yi all nodded, proving that Xie Yongbing was right. When it came to alchemy, they definitely wouldn't be biased, and wouldn't be impartial. With the approval of the 3 masters, Xie Yongbing became even more arrogant. She believed that she would definitely win. He then looked towards Qian Wui, only to see a strange expression on Qian Wui's face. He didn't know, but Qian Wui knew that Ling Han had accelerated the flow of time. A person who was proficient in the laws of time was practically invincible before the immortal king stage. In a battle of the same cultivation level, he would be invincible. I should be able to suppress Ling Han, right? Qian Wui thought. He was ahead by 2 minor levels, and he also had the aptitude of a king tier. No matter how heaven-defying the regulations of time were, it could not possibly allow Ling Han to surpass 2 minor levels of the ascending origin tier. Thinking of this, he regained his confidence. Ling Han also held the medicinal pill in his hand and said, 6 Yang Green Spirit Pill, a 4-star medicinal pill. He did not continue to introduce it because even he did not know how difficult it was to concoct this medicinal pill. It was something that he had figured out himself after studying the alchemical pills he had obtained from the treasure trove. The difficulty of concoction was extremely high. 6 Yang Green Spirit Pill? Grandmaster Zicheng and the others all looked confused. They seemed to have never heard of such a 4-star medicinal pill. Xie Yangbing also scoffed. This brat had concocted an alchemical pill that others didn't know about, and he still wanted to bluff his way through? TSK, it might not even be a 4-star medicinal pill. Wait! Grandmaster Tian Xan suddenly stood up. I seem to have seen you guys in an ancient book before. Wait, I'll be right back. Xiao He ran off. Thankfully, the speed of ascending origin tiers was too fast. In a short while, he ran back like a gust of wind, and there was indeed an ancient book in his hand. Grandmaster Zicheng and Grandmaster Chu Yi both scooted over, and after reading for a while, they all looked shocked. 6 Yang Green Spirit Pill. In the ancient pill recipe, the difficulty of concoction ranks 19th. Grandmaster Tian Xen read out. It's actually ranked 19th? Xie Yangbing was slightly surprised, but so what if it was 19th? His ancient pill was ranked 17th. Hold on, wasn't the 9 Cauldron Phoenix return pill ranked 19th? Forget it, I don't care. It's fine as long as I've won. His expression was filled with pride, and his eyes swept over Grandmaster Zicheng and the others. There was a hint of urgency in his eyes. You guys still aren't going to announce the victor? Grandmaster Zicheng spoke up and said, everyone should have some understanding. In the process of inheritance, a considerable number of pill recipes have already been destroyed and lost. Everyone nodded. Not only in the field of alchemy, but also in the field of martial art. But what meaning is there in saying this? Grandmaster Zicheng continued, the ancient pill is ranked 17th in the difficulty of concoction. This is the ranking of the existing pill recipes, but put it in the complete ancient pill recipes. He paused, and everyone came to a sudden realization. Now, there were too many pill recipes that had been lost, so they naturally had also been eliminated, causing the original pill recipes that had been ranked 30th to become 25th, or even 20th. Xie Yangbing's body also trembled. He only had the advantage of 2 rankings, and as long as the number of pill recipes in the top rankings that had been lost exceeded 2, he would instead be surpassed by Ling Han. Grandmaster Zicheng smiled and continued, in the ranking of this ancient pill recipe, the 6 Yang Green Spirit Pill is ranked 19th, and the ancient pill is ranked 32nd. Fuck, there's so much difference. Everyone was in an uproar, and at the same time, they were incredibly excited. Their patriarch was still the most powerful and awesome. Xie Yangbing's face paled, but he immediately roared, you guys must be colluding to deceive me. Grandmaster Zicheng smiled calmly, and tossed the ancient book in his hand at Xie Yangbing. Don't even think of destroying the ancient book. The 3 of us have already looked through it, and naturally have a verdict. Xie Yangbing hurriedly flipped through the book, and after sweeping through it, his face was ashen. True enough, Grandmaster Zicheng hadn't lied. His first reaction was to destroy the book, and then refuse to admit it. But Grandmaster Zicheng had already stated beforehand, so what could he do even if he refused to admit it? The 3 of them were the judges. Xie Yangbing took a deep breath, and calmed his emotions. He hadn't completely lost yet. He didn't believe that he would also lose to Ling Han in spirit refinement. All right, let's compete in spirit refinement again. Xie Yangbing said loudly. All right. Ling Han made a gesture of invitation. The 2 of them continued to concoct alchemical pills. It was still the same alchemical pill as before. First refinement. Second refinement. Third refinement. To be able to become a 4-star Grandmaster, he would at least be able to complete the 5th refinement. There was no doubt about this. Thus, before the 5th refinement, Xie Yangbing didn't even spare a glance at Ling Han. Only after the 5th refinement did he look at Ling Han out of the corner of his eye. 6th refinement, 7th refinement, everyone couldn't help but become nervous. That was a Grandmaster 7th refinement, and he had already reached the level of Grandmaster Zicheng. However, neither of them stopped, and began the 8th refinement. At this time, even Xie Yangbing looked nervous. He could indeed complete the 8th refinement, but he couldn't guarantee success every time. In fact, the rate of failure was relatively high. He had to be as careful as he could be, and as cautious as he could be. The speed of spirit refinement was faster, and after a day, they all stopped. Xie Yangbing showed an expression of joy. He had succeeded. However, when his eyes swept over Ling Han, his expression immediately became extremely ugly. Ling Han had also completed the 8th refinement. Chapter 2406. Xie Yangbing knew that his strength was only at the 8th refinement. If he went for the 9th refinement, he would definitely fail, and the alchemical pill would explode. If their results in spirit refinement were the same, then Ling Han would naturally be able to suppress him based on the difficulty of pill refinement. He still had a sliver of hope in his heart, and that was that his spirit refinement level surpassed Ling Han's. But he soon paled in shock, because Ling Han did not stop, but continued to spirit refinement. The 9th refinement, Xie Yangbing could not believe that Ling Han could still 9th refinement. No, he definitely could not succeed. Xie Yangbing thought. If he forced himself to 9th refinement, he would only explode, and then he would definitely win. Not bad. He retracted his hand and stood to the side, while Ling Han began 9th refinement. Under the acceleration of time, a day passed in the blink of an eye. He stopped, and did not continue to 10th refinement. In any case, he was definitely going to win, and he had completely established his invincible might in the hearts of everyone in Alchemy City. Lord is mighty. Lord is domineering. Lord is invincible. Everyone cheered. Ling Han had an absolute crushing advantage. Moreover, what was the concept of 9th refinement? One more step, and Ling Han could become a 5-star alchemist. This was too shocking. Xie Yangbing was in a daze. He had actually lost to Ling Han, who was even younger than him. Qian Wui revealed killing intent. So what if he was strong in alchemy? This was the world of cultivators, after all. As long as he killed Ling Han, then Xie Yangbing could still ascend. He was just about to make a move when he saw that Ling Han actually also happened to walk towards him. Don't seek death, Ling Han said calmly, a flash of killing intent flashing in his eyes. Qian Wui felt a chill all over his bones. This look, this killing intent was really too terrifying, making him feel as if he was facing an invincible celestial king. But he immediately cheered himself on. How could a mere ascending origin small tier be his match? Even if Ling Han grasped the regulations of time, so what if there was a difference of 2 minor levels? On the other hand, as long as he filled the entire area with the power of the rule, he would be able to prevent Ling Han from using the time rule. So what if the time rule was supreme? His right hand turned into a claw, and the power of rules began to condense. It would be fine if he didn't make a move, but once he did, it would be a thunderous move. He wanted to kill Ling Han in one fell swoop. Ling Han sneered. He naturally noticed Qian Wui's little tricks. This old dog was really courting death. Young man, you're too arrogant. Qian Wui brazenly attacked. Hong, a boundless ferocious aura spread out. He laughed heartily, and his right hand seemed to transform into the claw of a prehistoric giant beast, clawing at Ling Han. Not good. Grandmaster Zicheng and the others all stood up. Ling Han's alchemy skills were about to break through to the heavens, yet his own cultivation level was only at the ascending origin tier. He was far too far away from Qian Wui. This was Qian Wui's sneak attack, and it was also a powerful move that he had prepared for a long time, so how could it not be incredibly fierce? Ling Han only smiled faintly. His right hand clenched into a fist, and a terrifying physical power condensed. This was the most intrinsic power of the origin world, and was even above the regulations. Though he could not directly use it and could only strike out in the form of brute force, it was already enough. He swung out a fist and struck out at Chen Wui. Ling Han's fist was like a hot knife through butter, and Chen Wui's giant claw shattered with a single touch. It also caused Chen Wui to release a muffled groan, and his right hand was completely covered in blood. However, Ling Han's fist did not show any signs of stopping, and continued to strike out at Chen Wui. It was as if even if there was a great star in front of him, it would also be reduced to dust under this fist. Chen Wui's expression changed drastically. He finally realized that the feeling of terror that had risen up in him previously was not an illusion, but rather that this young man was really terrifyingly powerful. He hurriedly shot out in retreat, but in terms of explosive power, how could he compare to Ling Han? Ling Han caught up, and his fist struck out repeatedly. It was only 3 punches, and Chen Wui's protective source power shield was completely shattered. Then, Chen Wui could only vomit blood, and his whole person was beaten into a pulp. Ling Han's temper was actually very good. If you did not provoke him, he would also be amiable, but if you provoked him, then he would beat you until you vomited blood and broke your bones, and Chen Wui wanted to kill him, so he naturally could only return the favor. Everyone present clutched their heads. What had they just witnessed? An elite at the consummate level of the ascending origin tier was actually beaten to death by Ling Han's random punches? How could they believe this? But it was only an instant later, everyone exploded into cheers that were like a tsunami. Too strong. Their chairperson was really too strong. His talent in alchemy was unparalleled, and he was about to advance into the ranks of 5-star Grandmaster, and his strength in martial art was also world-shaking. These 2 or 3 punches had killed a cultivator at the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, and he could practically be considered a celestial king. Ling Han walked towards Xie Yongbing, a faint smile curling up the corners of his lips. Xie Yongbing was dazed, and his face was ashen. How could there be such a freak in this world? In terms of martial art and alchemy, he had reached a level that others could not even look up to. However, why was the other party's gaze so frightening? Ling Han smiled and said, "Since you like this place so much, then stay here in the future and concoct alchemical pills for me every day." Xie Yongbing couldn't help but nod. Although Ling Han was smiling, he only felt an endless chill. If he said a word of objection now, he would probably be immediately smashed into pieces. Ling Han patted Xie Yongbing's shoulder. "That's right. Since we are both alchemists, we should help each other." Xie Yongbing forced a smile, but it was even harder than crying. He nodded repeatedly, but in his heart he was cursing Ling Han half to death. If he was strong enough, he would definitely smash Ling Han into pieces. Ling Han's tone suddenly changed. "By the way, why did you people come all the way here?" "Nothing much, I just wanted to expand my own forces," Xie Yongbing hurriedly said. Ling Han patted his shoulder. "You're being dishonest again, aren't you?" The Eastern Celestial Realm was indeed quite profitable, but it could not compare to the Western Celestial Realm at all. Moreover, the two were separated by the boundless sea realm, and it was very inconvenient to travel between them. Unless they stayed here for a long time, even if Xie Yongbing took over Alchemy City, the dynasty would quickly change. Xie Yongbing continued to shake his head. "I really just wanted to plunder some treasures and resources." Ling Han broke into a grin and said, "Come, I can only search your soul." Xie Yongbing's expression instantly changed. Under soul search, not only would he have to expose all the secrets of his life, but his life would also be in danger. Otherwise, he would basically become a fool. "Don't make me wait too long," Ling Han said. Xie Yongbing hesitated for a moment before saying, "It is said that there is an ancient pill recipe hidden somewhere in Alchemy City." "What ancient pill recipe?" Ling Han asked. "It's called Immortal." Xie Yongbing did not hesitate any longer and directly spat it out. "Immortal?" Ling Han said with a smile. "Could it be that after eating it, one will directly become a celestial king?" "Yes." He did not expect Xie Yongbing to really nod. This time, Ling Han also became solemn. There was actually such an awesome alchemical pill in this world? Eating one could directly make one leap into the celestial king tier. No wonder people kept coming here even though the standard of alchemy in the Western celestial realm was so high. The value of this pill recipe was indeed too great. Chapter 2408. After staying in Alchemy City for many days, Ling Han set out once again, heading towards Parting Hatred City to reunite with his uncle, cousin, and the others. With their current abilities, it was naturally an easy journey. Even if they encountered bad people, they would be able to sweep them away. Thus, after a little less than half a year, they arrived at Parting Hatred City. On the way, Ling Han also continuously strengthened his attainment in the 10 refinements, and focused his attention on analyzing the celestial, trying it out in his mind millions of times. He definitely could not fail. Every single ingredient was too precious, and a single failure would be an indescribably great waste. He also used the flow of time on himself, so a little less than half a year's time was actually about 500 years, allowing him to grasp the 10 refinements more easily. He would only fail about once in 100 times. But Ling Han was still not satisfied. His minimum requirement was to fail once in 1,000 times, and it would be best if he failed once in 10,000 times. Only then would he concoct Celestial King Tier alchemical pills. Celestial King Tier alchemical pills were too precious and too rare, and he could not afford to waste them. After entering Parting Hatred City, they headed straight for the barren mountain where Yuzhen Shan and the others had settled down, but when they arrived, they could not help but be shocked, because a large town had already been built here. It was located at the foot of the mountain, and there were palaces halfway up and at the top of the mountain, beautiful and magnificent. Yuzhen Shan and the others had been doing a great job. Ling Han and the others walked towards the town, and saw that there were many merchants and pawns going in and out, currently pulling carts after carts of goods out, and carts after carts of goods being transported in. The entrance of Ling Han and the others did not attract anyone's attention. Perhaps they also thought of them as businessmen. They entered the town, and this place was actually ridiculously large. In the ancient realm, it was comparable to a large city. After walking around for a while, they arrived at a restaurant. This kind of place was always the most convenient for gathering information. As expected, listening to the conversations of the customers, Ling Han very quickly found out that Yuzhen Shan and the others had indeed made a name for themselves, and built this place into a shang fu, but it was not of a high level. Otherwise, Ling Han and the others would not have come to the carriages on their way here, and they could have kept them in their spatial god tool. Eat and drink to your heart's content. Let's go see Uncle and the others. Ling Han and the others left the restaurant and walked up the mountain. The higher-ups of this place all lived on the mountain. The spiritual energy there was more abundant, and it was more suitable for cultivation. However, there were no restrictions on entering or leaving the town, but one had to go up the mountain. Stop! The 2 guards immediately stopped Ling Han and the others. This is a restricted area. Do you have a pass? Ling Han smiled and shook his head. No. Then please go back. This isn't a place for you to sightsee, a guard said seriously. Ling Han said, What? Are you guys going to occupy the mountain and act like kings? The 2 guards were somewhat baffled. Are you stupid? Could it be that when you barged into someone else's house and were rejected, they had to produce evidence to prove that the house belonged to them? They were no longer in the mood to talk to Ling Han, so they chased him away. Ling Han was just teasing them and said, Please inform Yuzhen Shan, Yu Kai Yu Feng Pe Yun, or Mu Rong Qing. Just tell them that Ling Han has returned. Ling Han! Ling Han! The 2 guards were both stunned. They naturally knew who Ling Han was, but was it this guy in front of them? They both shook their heads. Young man, you must have captured some information and deliberately come here to pretend to be him, right? Go. Otherwise, you won't be able to gain any benefits when the masters come. The main reason was that Ling Han's previous performance had left a bad impression on them. Otherwise, they might really have gone to inform the masters. But now they absolutely did not believe it. The women all giggled. Who asked Ling Han to be so talkative? Now, he was actually looked down upon by a few heavenly body tier minor characters, and even wanted to chase him away. Ling Han shook his head helplessly and could only let out a long roar. His voice rumbled like a dragon, causing the heaven and earth to lose color. He was about to reach the celestial king tier, so he had this kind of strength. Who is it? Who dares to be impudent in our Panyun mountain? Who are you, madman? Innumerable people leaped out from the various mountains, but none of them could fly. Obviously, none of them were in the severing mundane tier. They quickly passed through the mountains, and very soon arrived here, surrounding Ling Han and the others. When Ling Han's group had many men and women, the ratio was seriously out of balance, and there were even a few outrageously beautiful women. They all felt a sense of dizziness. They were too beautiful, and they could not think of anything else. They only wanted to continue like this. However, there were definitely people with strong wills, and they immediately shouted, "Who are you people? Why are you being so impudent here?" Ling Han broke into a smile and said, "I am Ling Han, and I have come to visit an old friend." When everyone heard this, they were all skeptical. They had already heard stories about Ling Han many times, and they also greatly admired him. But in their hearts, tens of thousands of years had passed. Even if Ling Han had returned, he should have the image of a middle-aged man. This person in front of them was younger than most of them, so how could he possibly be Ling Han? He actually dares to impersonate Lord Ling Han. Many people said darkly. In their hearts, Ling Han was a god, and could not be blasphemed. Immediately, an impatient person moved, thrusting out a spear like a silver snake. Ling Han casually grabbed the spear, and smilingly said, "Why is it all you youngsters? Where are the adults? The lords are discussing an important matter." Someone was honest and really said it out loud. In the end, his mouth was naturally covered up by others. Ling Han gave an "oh." No wonder Feng Piyun and the others hadn't come out. So they had something to discuss. The matter they were discussing was still very important. Otherwise, they would at least send a few severing mundane tears over, right? "Attack together," a young man called out. He seemed to be very prestigious, and with a command, everyone moved. Ling Han casually pressed down, and the regulations of space were activated. Everyone was restrained, and they maintained their attacking posture, but could not move at all. They were greatly shocked. Who was this person? He was too powerful. A single person, and with just a press, they were all restrained. Ho! There was a roar, and billowing waves of dust appeared in the mountains, rapidly rising towards them. "It's Lord Rock Demon King," someone immediately said in pleasant surprise. Ling Han had only restrained everyone's ability to move, but did not make them unable to speak. "Haha, Lord Rock Demon King will definitely beat him until he pisses his pants. Just wait to cry." All the young people were filled with anticipation. In their hearts, the Rock Demon King was practically invincible. Dust billowed, and they saw a stone person appear, charging over at an astonishing speed. Close. Some of the young people couldn't help but look shocked, because the Rock Demon King did not have the slightest intention of slowing down. It looked like he was going to directly attack Ling Han. But they were still stuck in the middle, and if they were hit by the Rock Demon King, they would definitely turn into a bloody pulp. Ling Han smiled and stretched out a hand. The people in front of him immediately parted like waves, opening up a green path for the stone person. The stone person instantly collided, and everyone could feel the ground groan. This collision was really domineering. This brat would definitely be done for if he took this blow. Chapter 2409. Everyone was sure that Ling Han would be screwed after being hit like that. But when they looked again, their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Not only was there no injury on Ling Han's body, but the Stone Demon King had actually transformed into a puppy and was running around this person. Lean, that was the Lord Stone Demon King. Even Lord Feng and Lord Murong respected him a lot. Moreover, the fact that the Stone Demon King could be called a Demon King showed how frightening his temper was. Now, he had actually transformed into a puppy and was acting cute to get attention. This was simply ruining one's worldview. I must be seeing things. This is all fake. They tried again, but this time, It was even more amusing. A small beast jumped out from who knows where. It stood up like a human, its hind legs were strong and powerful, but its two front legs were incomparably short. Its claws were tucked in front of its chest, just like a human. However, the little critter was extremely ferocious as it tore at the Stone Demon King. Not good, Lord Stone Demon King was flipped over. He had a huge physique, but he was flipped over by the little critter. The little critter was jumping on the body of the Lord Stone Demon King. Bang, bang, bang. Every time it jumped, the earth would tremble, showing the terrifying strength of the little critter. Everyone's face turned green. If they were stepped on by the little critter, wouldn't their intestines come out? Ling Han laughed and said, all right, this is the little stone, and this is the little terror. You two are family. Though Little Terror hadn't reached his strongest state yet, he had already recovered to the peak stage of the fourth severance. As an existence that could become a monarch tier, his battle prowess was naturally frightening. He easily defeated the stone golem. Ling Han then walked towards the little stone. You've been slacking off, haven't you? It's already been tens of thousands of years, so why haven't you entered the soul division yet? The rock spirit barked like a dog and lay at Ling Han's feet, its face full of grievance. If it relied on its own cultivation, even if it could advance to the dividing soul tier, it would take at least several tens of billions of years. A short period of several tens of thousands of years was nothing at all. And Master, you don't give me the stone essence to eat, so how can I grow? Good. Here you go. Ling Han casually sprinkled them all. They were all jade soul essences. To a rock spirit, they were definitely existences equivalent to immortal medicines. The rock spirit's eyes were glowing as it hurriedly picked up all the jade stones. Its face was filled with vigilance. It would fight to the death with whoever dared to come over. Little Terror looked on disdainfully. It was just a few smelly stones. Was there a need to treat them as treasures? Let's go. Bring me to Big Brother and the others. Ling Han patted the stone golem. The rock spirit hurriedly nodded and led the way. Everyone was dumbfounded. Who had ever seen the Rock Demon King being so obedient? There was only one possibility. Ling Han, the legendary lord, had finally returned. The stone spirit led the way, and they came to a mountain peak. A palace was built on the mountain peak, and the golden walls were glorious. There were guards at the door, but when they saw the stone spirit leading the way, they couldn't help but be surprised. Who didn't know that this was an important place where only the most core members could enter? Although the Rock Demon King had the right to do so, what was the point of bringing so many people? Ling Han said, Big Brother Feng, Third Brother Murong, Uncle, I'm back. Shio. Immediately, figures flew out from the palace. Fourth Brother. Ling Han. Master. Many people rushed over, and Yu Zhenshan went to Yu Hongchang. Brother and sister reunited, so they naturally had a lot to talk about. And Azura Demon Emperor's expression was definitely the most exaggerated. He looked as if he had seen his own father, hugging onto Ling Han's leg and refusing to let go. This was a great opportunity to show his loyalty. Immediately, Feng Puyun gave an order, and a banquet was set up to welcome Ling Han and the others. After some small talk, Ling Han asked, What are you guys discussing? Did you encounter some trouble? Yu Zhenshan nodded. We did, but since you're back, then it's definitely fine. As it turned out, their development trend was gratifying, and they were getting bigger and bigger. Thus, there was a force in the city that extended an olive branch to them, wanting to take them into their own system. Feng Piyun and the others were discussing whether they should accept this invitation or not. Once they agreed, their safety would be greatly improved, because they would be able to use the banner of that family. But there was also a disadvantage, and that was that they would have to hand over a very large portion of their profits. Furthermore, that force did not forget to threaten them while recruiting them. If they waited until the next time to hear their reply, if Feng Piyun and the others answered with a refusal, then it was very likely that they would be destroyed. Ling Han smiled faintly. Don't worry. The strongest elite in Separation Hatred City was only at the Immortal Palace tier, and he could defeat them with a single finger. Everyone had a kind of blind faith in Ling Han. Since Ling Han said that they didn't need to worry, then he definitely had absolute confidence. Immediately, they let go of their worries and began to drink to their heart's content. Feng Peyun and Mu Rongqing couldn't help but ask about the Rain Emperor. Now that Ling Han had returned, they couldn't see the Rain Emperor, which made them worried. Ling Han laughed loudly. Second brother is incredibly powerful now. He has long since advanced into the ascending origin tier, and has even formed an Emperor star. Everyone knew about the ascending origin tier, but they didn't know what an Emperor star was, so they all asked about it out of curiosity. Ling Han simply gave everyone a general introduction, though he didn't mention anything about the Plane Wars. This was too far away from them, and in any case, they couldn't help much, so they might as well enjoy their lives here. He retrieved a large number of alchemical pills and distributed them to everyone. In the end, everyone stopped drinking, and all listened to Ling Han's lecture. Limited by their own aptitude and resources, not a single person here had advanced into the dividing soul tier, and naturally none of them had advanced into the fifth severance. This was unrealistic. Even if Ling Han was the Alchemy Emperor, he couldn't possibly help them reach the heavens in a single step. Cultivation, in the end, still depended on oneself. Ling Han observed for a while, and there were very few who could break through to the dividing soul tier, and they all needed to expend a huge amount of resources. Under normal circumstances, it was completely possible to nurture a few dozen or even 100 dividing soul tier elites. Yet Ling Han didn't care. What did he need so many resources for? Naturally, he would spend them on his family and friends. A few days later, it was time for Feng Peyun and the others to reply. This was a noble clan in Separation Hatred City, the Tai clan. The ancestor of the Tai clan was a heaven soul tier, and if he could advance even further, he would have the right to speak in Separation Hatred City. Unfortunately, advancing this step was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Who knew how many years had passed, but the ancestor of the Tai clan was still lingering at the heaven soul tier, and it was even more likely that he wouldn't have any hope of advancing to the immortal palace tier in his lifetime. He would slowly be exhausted to death by the immortal's tribulation. Sure enough, the Tai clan arrived on time. Ling Han asked Feng Peyun and the others to receive them. In any case, he was only responsible for fighting. He was currently teaching Little Terror. This little guy was a product of the foreign realm, and could be said to be blessed by nature in the foreign realm. He was born powerful, but after coming to the celestial realm, he had to start from the beginning. Moreover, his progress was ridiculously slow. Fortunately, Little Terror's life structure was different, and he didn't need to go to some mystery realm to break through. As long as his power increased, he would naturally break through. In fact, it could even be said that there was no such thing as cultivation level for him. It could be considered a smooth straight line. The stronger his power was, the more powerful his battle prowess would be. He wasn't like cultivators, whose power would skyrocket after breaking through each cultivation level. Little Terror was a product of the foreign realm, and it was extremely likely that he possessed the power of heaven and earth of the foreign realm. Thus, he had skipped over the level of regulations. Thus, there was naturally no such thing as cultivation level for him. This kind of life was on a higher level. Chapter 24:10. After Ling Han taught for a while, it was Wally's turn. In terms of the power of heaven and earth, Wally was definitely stronger. Wally was also very interested in Little Terror. After all, natural products were rare, so he didn't mind teaching and studying them at the same time. Ling Han sat at the side, and in a short while, he heard the sound of a table being slammed. He slowly strolled to the conference hall. Sure enough, the Tai clan's envoy's face was full of anger as he slammed the table repeatedly. Fine, I gave you face, but you don't want it, so just wait to be destroyed. There were a total of 2 people from the Tai clan. The one who was speaking now was a middle-aged man in his 30s, with first severance cultivation level, and the other was a young man in his 20s, currently sipping tea, looking very calm and relaxed. When the middle-aged man finished speaking, the young man put down his teacup and coughed lightly. Young master, and please speak. The middle-aged man hurriedly bowed, like a servant, expressing goodwill towards the young man. Only then did the young man say, "You have to think clearly." Are you really going to refuse our Thai clan's good intentions? Hey, young masterin said, have you all thought clearly? Don't be muddle-headed. The middle-aged man immediately used his connections to intimidate others, pointing at them one by one, looking very much like a villain. This is our final decision, Phong Puyun said calmly. He had been a top elite in the small world, so he naturally had his own integrity and style, which was something that many people who were far stronger than him did not have. Thus, there was a saying, it was better to be the head of a chicken than the tail of an ox. You are all a bunch of pigs, the middle-aged man rebuked loudly, wanting nothing more than to run over and strangle them. Meanwhile, the young man only smiled. I'd like to, where do you all get such confidence from? He reached out to grab Phong Puyun. This was the strongest elite present, 4th Severance cultivation level. As long as he could capture Phong Puyun, it would naturally destroy the confidence of everyone here. Phong Puyun humphed softly and moved to parry the attack. His natural talent was far from being able to compare with that of Ling Han and the Rain Emperor, but he had been able to advance to the shattering void tier in the impoverished lower realm all those years ago, so he could actually be considered an extraordinary genius. It was just that the celestial realm was too big, and there were too many geniuses, so he was not very eye-catching. However, his battle prowess wasn't weak either. Over the past few days, Ling Han had furiously raised his strength. Whatever ancestral monarch blood, high-tier medicinal pills, anything that could be used had been used. Coupled with the acceleration of time, his battle prowess had risen to an astonishing level. Boom, 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 the two of them exchanged blows, instantly destroying the hall and sending it flying into the sky. Hee, if young masterin makes a move, that person will definitely die, the middle-aged man said sarcastically. Young masterin was one of the most outstanding members of the Thai clan's younger generation. His name was Taian, and he was only one step away from the dividing soul tier. But no one panicked. Even if Phong Puyun wasn't a match for him, wasn't there still Ling Han? In the sky, the more Taian fought, the more panicked he became. He still hadn't taken down his opponent? This greatly exceeded his expectations. In his expectations, he would be able to gain the absolute upper hand in 100 moves at most, and establish an absolute advantage in 500 moves. However, they had already exchanged 200 or 300 moves, yet not only had he not gained the upper hand, but he was even being suppressed instead. He couldn't accept this. He was an outstanding member of the Thai clan's younger generation, yet he actually couldn't suppress an unorthodox person. Meanwhile, the more Phong Puyun fought, the more satisfied he became. He originally didn't have such powerful battle prowess, and it was all thanks to the benefits of Ling Han's sudden increase that his battle prowess had doubled. In the beginning, he still couldn't get used to such powerful strength, but after fighting for a long time, he finally got used to it, and completely suppressed Taian pung, pung, pung. Flashes of light continuously flashed in the sky, and deafening rumbles rang out incessantly. After more than half a day, a figure suddenly fell from the sky. The middle-aged man instantly laughed loudly. Ha! Young masterin won. A young master and young masterin. After laughing for a while, he realized that the person who had fallen was actually Taian. He hurriedly ran over and helped Taian up. Phong Puyun landed on the ground, his confidence soaring. He felt as if he had returned to a small world. Although the world was vast, he could do as he pleased. Scram! Phong Puyun rebuked. You dare to tell us to scram? The middle-aged man was incredulous. One had to know that the Thai clan had a dividing soul tier elite. So what if you beat Taian? The Thai clan had people who could suppress you. Taian, however, felt that he had lost face, and stopped the middle-aged man's rebuke. He said darkly, so there are still hidden dragons and crouching tigers in Coiling Cloud Mountain. All right, I admit defeat this time. He pushed the middle-aged man away, wanting to walk on his own. Young masterin, young masterin. The middle-aged man hurriedly followed. However, he had just taken a step when he saw someone blocking in front of him. He couldn't help but become angry and rebuked, scram. Ling Han smiled slightly. Your mouth is too smelly. If I don't teach you a lesson, you won't remember. He waved his hand and he slapped the middle-aged man across the face. The middle-aged man's body spun quite a few times, and a spray of blood and a dozen or so fragments also sprayed out. Ah! The middle-aged man screamed. After stabilizing himself with great difficulty, he turned to Ling Han and said, You dare to hit me?" Ling Han was shocked. "You still haven't learned your lesson?" The middle-aged man hurriedly chased after Tai. He was already filled with fear towards Ling Han. He had slapped him into a retard with a single palm. He was completely no match for him. Meanwhile, Taiyan glanced at Ling Han and Feng Piyun a few more times, and then left without even turning his head. He would definitely come back. Ling Han didn't stop him. In any case, he was going to stay here for a while, and the Tai clan would just treat it as a diversion. This time, the Tai clan's reaction was much faster and also much fiercer. A measly severing mundane tier force not only rejected their good intentions, but actually wounded their envoy. A day later, the Tai clan mobilized a large number of troops. There were 2 dividing soul tier elites leading the team, and they were accompanied by 11 severing mundane tier elites. Added with a few Genesis tier elites, this could be said to be a vast group. "Young Master Yun, I've made a fool of myself." There was an outsider among this group of Tai clan, but if Ling Han was here, he would definitely be able to recognize him with a single glance. This was Fu Gaoyan, the ruler of Separation Hatred City, a direct descendant of the Fu clan, and one of the heirs of the clan in the past. In the past, he had been one of the heirs, and now he was the only one. Thus, the Tai clan naturally had to be incredibly respectful towards Fu Gaoyan. Meanwhile, Fu Gaoyun was cold and indifferent. He had just accepted the Tai clan's invitation to be a guest, and in the end, he encountered this matter. His blood was boiling, and he thought that since he had nothing to do, he might as well come over. He indeed had nothing to do. As the mighty heir of the Fu clan, he was actually so frivolous and carefree. After so many years, his cultivation level had also greatly improved. It was already very good that he had reached the Earth Soul tier. The group of people ferociously charged into the town. They were far too powerful, and their arrogance soared into the sky. The merchants in the town all found a place to hide, afraid that they would be caught in the crossfire. "Where's the person in charge of this place? Come out!" A dividing soul tier elite of the Tai clan shouted. Feng Piyun, Mu Rongqing, and Ling Han walked out together. Fu Gaoyun's eyes instantly widened, and he rubbed his eyes as if he had seen a ghost. Chapter 24:12. Ling Han began special training for everyone. With Wall's help, he had a special way of studying the power of heaven and earth, and could bypass the necessary cultivation level barriers. For example, a severing mundane tier had to go to a mystery realm related to the severing mundane tier, and a dividing soul had to go to another mystery realm. 30,000 years wasn't enough for him at all. The opening of a mystery realm wasn't decided by anyone. With Wall's help, he could bypass all of this. In any case, he already owed this guy a lot, and Ling Han indeed had a lot of Celestial King materials in his hands, such as the Green Song Celestial Sword, Celestial King Ring, and a small piece of celestial metal. It was enough to pay. Thus, Wall also worked hard to calculate and predict, looking for a way to bypass the mystery realm of heaven and earth. Perhaps even a heavenly venerable couldn't do it, but Wall could, because he was the product of several hundred epochs worth of resources from a plane, and was the absolute essence. As expected, not long after, Wall came up with a plan. This required using the power of heaven and earth to forcefully push it up. The power of heaven and earth was above the regulations. Ling Han came up with a plan. This could either be done by a heavenly venerable and guide in some mystical power of heaven and earth, or he could use the dimension scroll to absorb some of the power and guide it into the body of the target. The first method was safe, but where could he find a heavenly venerable? Wu Lin Zhou thought highly of him, but it didn't mean that Ling Han could ask them for help for everything, and this wasn't just once or twice, but many times. Thus, Ling Han decided to do it himself. He cultivated hard, throwing all kinds of resources on himself, and squandering the blood essence of the ancestral king like it was free. After 3,000 years, he finally tempered his source power. The origin power in his body had basically turned into source power, but it wasn't pure. Ascending origin tier, great perfection tier. Next, he had to continuously temper his source power and extract the source power of heaven and earth for his own use, accumulating the amount of source power. Once the door to the great perfection tier was opened, the upper limit of his body technique also increased further, and his vitality soared to 4,800. At this rate, he really could have Celestial King battle prowess when he reached the consummate level. If word of this got out, there would definitely be no one who would believe that an ascending origin tier could actually rival a Celestial King, even if it was the weakest Celestial King. The cultivation of the others was also skyrocketing. With Ling Han, the Alchemy Emperor's continuous supply of pills, in addition to Wali's guidance that transcended the knowledge of this plane, if their progress was still not fast, they would really have to apologize. Ling Han was very gratified. Even his parents, who had mediocre talent in martial art, were rapidly improving their cultivation level, but it would be difficult for them to reach the consummate level of the ascending origin tier within 40,000 years. After 40,000 years, he had to leave. He could only refine the celestial immortal and give it to his parents for them to consume. With Grandmaster Zicheng and the others looking after him, there shouldn't be any problems. And he had finally concocted his first Celestial King level pill, causing a sensation in the entire Eastern Celestial realm. After hundreds of millions of years, the Eastern Celestial domain finally had a 5-star Grandmaster. Alchemy City naturally went crazy. The entire city was in a state of jubilation. Because of this, they naturally had to hold a great banquet and invite important figures from all over. Every Celestial King received an invitation, and the majority of Celestial Kings also gave face, deciding to attend. They had also received information about Ling Han. He was a super Emperor star, and not only would he definitely become a 9th Heaven Celestial King, he might even become a Heavenly Venerable. Just for the sake of Ling Han's potential, the various great Celestial Kings also had to make emotional investments. Thus, a great many Celestial Kings came to the great banquet, unlike the last time when Ling Han had assumed the position of chairperson, when the Celestial King tier forces had only sent out representatives. With a single comparison, it could be seen how great the change in Ling Han's present status was. In Alchemy City, everyone was in a jubilant mood. With such a chairperson, they were naturally incredibly proud. Even Xie Yongbing was completely convinced. Ling Han was actually a 5-star Grandmaster. This was an existence that even he had to look up to. Perhaps in another epoch, he might become a 5-star Grandmaster, but that was only a possibility, and that was something that was too far in the future. There were also some big shots among the Celestial Kings, such as the Eternal Prosperity Celestial King. He was an 8th heaven being, and in the Eastern Celestial realm, he was also one of the top elites. He had personally come with Yen Xianlu, giving enough face to Ling Han. Brother Ling. Yen Xianlu was also in a jubilant mood. Congratulations, congratulations. Ling Han nodded with a smile. Recently, he had heard such words so much that his ears were about to get sick of it. What cultivation level are you at now? Can you make it in time for the 30,000-year deadline? Yen Xianlu asked. Only then did Ling Han perk up a little and said, there should be no problem. What he was worried about was not the advancement of his cultivation level, but the materials to refine a Celestial King. Now, he was opening up a wide path to wealth, because refining a Celestial King required a frightening amount of resources. Even if he had plundered the possessions of a great many ancient kings of the foreign realm, it was still not enough. There was no helping it. There were many things in the foreign realm that could not be used here. The regulations were different, and the power of heaven and earth was different. The difference was too great. Yen Xianlu looked around, and then said in a low voice, I have received news that some people want to attack you on the celestial path. Ling Han smiled. Oh, is that so? Celestial kings could not step onto the celestial path, so when he reached the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, merely his battle prowess in terms of regulations would be able to sweep aside all ascending origin tiers, What more when it was very likely that his body techniques would reach Celestial King tier level. If Celestial Kings did not appear, who would be a match for him? Brother Ling, you must not be careless. There are really some super monsters among these people, and they already possessed the strength to sweep aside all ascending origin tiers billions of years ago. It's just that the celestial path has yet to open, and they are unable to advance into the Celestial King tier, Yan Xianlu said solemnly. After so many years of tempering, their strength is unfathomable, and a few even possess some Celestial King tier techniques. Ling Han's interest was instantly piqued. Really? Yan Xianlu really did not know whether to laugh or cry. The opponents were almost nature-defying, and you actually looked so interested. It should be known that they were targeting you. According to my master, those people can enter a kind of state known as the heaven restriction. Under the heaven restriction, it is equivalent to them becoming celestial kings. No ascending origin tier is a match for them, he hurriedly said. Ling Han was becoming more and more interested. Heaven restriction, what kind of state is that? I don't know, but only monarch tier cultivators that have reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the ascending origin tier and accumulated their cultivation for innumerable years could possibly comprehend the heaven restriction, Yan Xianlu said. Different levels of talent in martial art also differ when one can enter the heaven restriction. Ling Han gave a sliver of a smile on his face, but his fighting spirit was already blazing. He wanted to battle this kind of opponent. In the new generation, though Shi Zi and Jia Lan were noble emperor stars, because of the accumulation of time, they could not possibly enter the heaven restriction state, but Ji Wuming could definitely. Because he was the reincarnation of the strongest ninth heaven celestial king, he definitely grasped this kind of state. He could battle Ji Wuming again. Ling Han's blood was boiling. All this way, only Ji Wuming had given him immense pressure, causing him to treasure this opponent very much. Yan Xianlu could only be speechless. His original intention was to give Ling Han a reminder, but he forgot that this guy was a battle-hungry person. Qing Zixin, Fu Zhou, and the other monarch tiers also arrived one after another. Coincidentally, they had originally been at the Saint Source Academy and just happened to have returned due to some matters. Otherwise, they would definitely have missed this grand occasion. Ling Han drank and chatted with them, and only bid farewell after spending a whole month together. He began to cultivate wholeheartedly. Chapter 24:13. Time flew by quickly, and everyone's cultivation was rapidly increasing. 10,000 years passed, and Ling Dongxing and his wife finally advanced into the severing mundane tier. Moreover, they used Wall's special method and did not have to sever their mortal bonds. Such a severing mundane tier was even weaker than an ordinary severing mundane tier, but Ling Han did not care. He only wanted cultivation level. As long as he could advance to the ascending origin tier in future, he would be able to forcibly raise his cultivation level to Celestial King tier as a celestial. Even Ling Dongxing and his wife could advance into the severing mundane tier, so there was no need to mention the others, who advanced even faster. Meanwhile, Ling Han had not completed the second tempering of his source power. After another 5,000 years, he finally completed this second step, advancing into the consummate level of the ascending origin tier. Once the upper limit of his cultivation level was opened, his battle prowess soared again, and his vitality index reached 4,999 points. The lowest standard for Celestial King tier was 5,000 points. It was just a little short. Ling Han was surprised. He was weaker than a Celestial King, and there seemed to be some kind of mysterious restriction in the heaven and earth. If you were not a Celestial King, you could not possibly have Celestial King tier battle prowess. However, it was just a little short, and it could really be said that there was no difference. Similarly, his defense index was only one short of 5,000. In other words, a first heaven Celestial King could hurt, wound, or even kill him, but they would have to attack him countless times. This kind of defense would probably give even a first heaven Celestial King a headache. At this step, the source power in Ling Han's body was already incredibly pure. What he needed to do was strengthen the source power, fill his whole dantian, and reach the peak stage of consummate level. This step would take a very, very long time. Source power was the essence of origin power, and about 100,000 portions of origin power could condense into one portion of source power. It was clear how difficult this was, and the time needed was naturally astonishingly long. However, Ling Han had enough confidence that he could definitely reach the peak stage of consummate level before the celestial path opened. Taking a step back, even if he was a little short, it was fine. The celestial path would open for a very, very long time, and he could cultivate to the peak stage of consummate level in the celestial path. Hu Niu, the Empress, and bewitching Maiden Ro were all confident that they would be able to reach the peak stage of consummate level before the celestial path opened, but the others could forget about it. The gap was not just a little. Ling Han once again focused his attention on alchemy. He definitely had to push the success rate of concocting 5-star alchemical pills to the level of 100%. Otherwise, when the time came, even if he only failed once in concocting a celestial pill, he would feel incredibly pained. Relying on the astonishing money-making machine that was Alchemy City, Ling Han's net worth became thicker and thicker, and the number of celestial portions that he could concoct also increased. Of course, he still lacked celestial seeds, which could only be obtained on the celestial path. 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years. Time flew by. Ling Han's only regret was that he had yet to find his son. He didn't know how his unfilial son was doing now. After getting a wife, he actually abandoned his parents and didn't come back for so long. The deadline of 30,000 years was about to arrive, and Ling Han and the others set off once again, preparing to walk the path of immortality and become immortal kings. Every one of them was a little excited. Celestial kings, the highest level of the celestial realm aside, were pitifully few in number and could be counted with a single hand. Ling Han, Hu Niu, the Empress, and bewitching Maiden Ro naturally all reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the ascending origin tier. Little Terra was not far behind. After getting used to his new cultivation technique, he had already recovered to the consummate level of the origin tier, and his battle prowess was terrifying. The four of them, together with Hua, headed all the way north. At the northernmost part of this continent was the entrance to the celestial path. Though the celestial path was called a path, it was actually a massive mystery realm. Both the eastern celestial realm and the western celestial realm had a path to enter, and it would only appear once every 10 billion years. Ling Han and the others traveled over land and water, and after 3 years, they arrived at the entrance to the celestial path. At this time, there were still about 2 years' time until the celestial path opened. The time was not fixed. Sometimes, it would open a little earlier, and sometimes it would open a little later. Thus, everyone would try their best to arrive as early as possible. Because Yen Xianlu and the others were all cultivating in the Saint Source Academy, they would enter from the entrance of the Western Celestial Realm and would not encounter Ling Han and the others here. Damn brat, Grandpa Dog has come to send you on your last journey. The large black dog popped out from who knew where. Ling Han couldn't help but feel gloomy. He had not died, so what was there to say that he would send him on his last journey? This damn dog just had a cheap mouth. Ling Han humphed and asked, "Have you cultivated the power of a heavenly venerable tier yet?" "Damn brat, Grandpa Dog is just about to settle the score with you." The large black dog's expression was filled with displeasure. What kind of lousy cultivation technique is that, and what model, formula? Pay, Grandpa Dog has not understood it even after so many years. Ling Han laughed loudly. "You are stupid, so don't blame others for giving you difficult questions." The large black dog ignored him and pulled Hua to one side. The man and dog spoke quietly, and Ling Han could not be bothered to listen. It had to be related to cultivating the power of heaven and earth. A great many people recognized Ling Han and knew that he was the chairperson of Alchemy City, and more so a 5-star alchemist. They all came to pay their respects. Even if those who came here were basically in the ascending origin tier, and of course, there were also some who had come to join in the fun. Their strength was uneven, and there were very few of them, but even if someone had walked the celestial path and successfully been crowned as a king, they still had to be polite when they saw Ling Han. The martial art environment of the Eastern Celestial Realm could not compare to that of the Western Celestial Realm in the first place, and added with the fact that the majority of monarchs and emperors had gone to the Saint Source Academy, there were pitifully few prodigies here now. Even if they had stepped onto the celestial path, there were pitifully few who could ultimately cultivate a celestial seed and become a celestial king. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. Everyone was used to waiting. One day, a rainbow suddenly appeared in the sky. Instantly, everyone's eyes were drawn over. Upon closer inspection, they discovered that this was not an ordinary rainbow. Not only was it 9 colors, but one end was connected to the ground, while the other end was connected to the endless galaxy. "The celestial path has appeared," someone said. Instantly, the crowd was seething with excitement. Some people had come here more than once, while others were here for the first time. That kind of excitement was naturally not something that experienced people could compare to. They were filled with confidence, thinking that the failure of others was their problem, and that they would definitely succeed. Ling Han turned around and asked, "Wall, are you going?" No. The large black dog shook his paw repeatedly. Now that he is Grandpa Dog's man, don't have any ideas about him. Meanwhile, Wall did not make a sound at the side, tacitly agreeing. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. He did not know what price the large black dog had paid to make Wall agree to cooperate with him, and it was most likely divine metal. It seemed like Wall only accepted this kind of thing, and the large black dog was a 9th heaven celestial king, so he would definitely be able to obtain divine metal. "All right, then let's go." Ling Han and the others set off, walking towards the rainbow. They were not the first. A great many people had already stepped onto the rainbow, but they had only taken a few steps before falling down. This caused the others to all fly up, wanting to directly descend from the sky. However, the strange thing was that they could not descend onto the rainbow from the sky. Ling Han and the others also stepped onto the rainbow. The first thing they felt was that it was slippery, causing their bodies to become unsteady, and they almost immediately fell down. No wonder so many people could not stand firmly. Indeed, the cultivation level of the ascending origin tier seemed to be useless in this place. That was because this was a mystery realm of heaven and earth, and even celestial kings could not match its might. Chapter 24:14. Why was it so difficult for ascending origin tiers to become celestial kings? Not to mention finding or cultivating a complete celestial seed, just wanting to enter the true celestial path through this path was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. All the ascending origin tiers were like people learning to walk, tripping after every few steps, looking very pathetic. Ling Han had walked the furthest, and now, the person who walked the furthest only managed to walk a distance of 300 meters. Most people were flopping around in the area of 30 meters, which was a comical sight. He walked it himself and had personal experience. Why was it difficult to walk? Because this rainbow bridge was formed from regulations, and it was constantly changing 9 regulations. Those who did not cultivate the corresponding regulations would be severely targeted and would easily slide down. If they wanted to cross the bridge, they could. Firstly, if you were proficient in these 9 regulations, then no matter how the regulations changed, you could deal with them calmly. But below Celestial King tier, who would have so much free time to cultivate other regulations? Even if they did, they would only be proficient in 2 or 3. 4 or 5. Sorry, they did not have that much energy. Thus, if one wanted to be proficient in 9 regulations, this was really something that only the strong could do. Secondly, if one's grasp of one regulation reached the pinnacle, then no matter how the outside world changed, one would be able to deal with the myriad changes by remaining unchanged. This was naturally also a method. Though one had to be careful and conscientious, it was suitable for the majority of cultivators. For example, the Empress, Hunyeo, and Bewitching Maiden Ro were all proficient in one regulation, but because of the grand cosmic infinite body, they also had considerable attainments in the regulations of time. They could still advance steadily. Their speed was not fast, but each step was steady. Ling Han had cultivated each cultivation level and each kind of regulation to a perfect level. Thus, he could safely pass through with just a single regulation, what more when the number of regulations he had grasped had reached a certain number. But Ling Han walked in the opposite direction, not using any regulations, and just strode forward like this. His body technique was tempered by the power of heaven and earth, and this level was even above regulations. Ling Han wanted to try and see if he could do it here. At first, he could not step onto the Rainbow Bridge at all, and was inferior to even the weakest ascending origin tier. This caused many people to snicker secretly, but because they were wary of his identity as the chairperson of Alchemy City, no one dared to laugh out loud, but whispers were unavoidable. What is an alchemist doing here? Have you ever seen an alchemist become an immortal king? How is it possible for someone with different talents to be crowned king in two different domains? That's right. A 5-star alchemist is already awesome enough, yet he still wants to become a celestial king. These people were all narrow-minded. They were making sarcastic remarks on the side, but they were only whispering to each other, not daring to let Ling Han hear them. Actually, Ling Han could hear them, but he was too lazy to care. Did he still need to care about the gazes of these scum? It was just like how a tiger could ignore an ant's provocation. Ling Han told the queen and the others not to wait for him. Anyway, if he fell too far behind, he would use the power of rules to catch up. He believed that it wouldn't take long to reach the top of the rainbow. He was very interested in the immortal path itself. Before this, he had specially asked the Eternal Prosperity Celestial King for guidance, and also asked Wally to analyze and predict. He believed that the celestial path was very likely to be the core of the celestial realm, or at least a place close to the core. Thus, it was possible to capture the essence of rules here, and even turn it into a celestial seed that could be planted in a cultivator's consciousness, connecting with the rules. I am the rules, and I am the representative of the heaven and earth. What Ling Han was concerned about was whether he could sense the power of heaven and earth now that he was close to the core. He had heard Wally say before that the origin world was formed from 6 kinds of essence energy, and it was the same for every plane. However, the higher the level of the plane, the more of this essence energy it possessed, and the more flexible it would be to accommodate elites. For example, the celestial realm and the foreign realm were actually both low-level planes, but the celestial realm couldn't accommodate heavenly venerables below, but the foreign realm could. Aside from these 6 kinds of essence energy, every plane had its own unique power, which could also be called a seal. This was something that had to be grasped in order to become a heavenly venerable. Thus, there was another reason why Ling Han had to enter the celestial path, and that was to sense that unique power of the celestial realm. A mere ascending origin tier. Even if he became a celestial king, that would only be the first heaven, and he actually wanted to sense the power of heaven and earth, and ascend to the heavens in a single step. If this happened to anyone else, it would naturally be a joke, but Ling Han could now extract the energy of Virtual Child. Though he couldn't refine it at all, and could only borrow this kind of power to flow through his body for a while to temper himself, he had, after all, sensed this level of power before. It was precisely because of this consideration that he would use the power of heaven and earth to try walking the Rainbow Bridge. He continued to fail, but had no intention of giving up. He faintly had a feeling that it was feasible. He didn't know where his confidence came from, but he just had to believe it. 100, 1,000, 10,000 times. Though the Empress and the others walked slowly, after such a long time, they had already walked so far that they couldn't be seen with the naked eye, and a large number of people had adapted to the changes on the Rainbow Bridge. Those that could succeed had more or less succeeded, and step by step, they slowly walked towards the other end of the Rainbow Bridge. Ling Han naturally became the laughingstock of many people. The main reason for this was because of jealousy. The chairperson of Alchemy City, the youngest 5-star alchemist in history, was also so freakish in cultivation. If he was still so freakish in cultivation, how could others live? People would always think of ways to give themselves a sense of superiority. 30,000 times, 50,000 times, 100,000 times. Ling Han suddenly broke into a smile. He had finally found the way, and faintly sensed an energy that was on a similar level to Virtual Child's energy, yet was also completely different. It was a unique power that belonged to the celestial realm. If ninth heaven's celestial kings knew about this, they would all go mad with envy. For Feng Qin, the 9 and 5 paragons, becoming a second step heavenly venerable was transcendence, but for the vast majority of ninth heaven celestial kings, actually becoming a heavenly venerable was their transcendence. Otherwise, they could only be on par with the regulations. Sensing that unique power of the celestial realm was the first step to becoming a heavenly venerable. Unfortunately, there were far too many ninth heaven celestial kings that even this step was within their reach. In terms of which celestial king in the celestial realm could achieve this, it was probably the royal void. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the ambition to become a heavenly venerable within an epoch. This was the unique power of the celestial realm. Ling Han nodded internally and tried to use the model that Wall had given him to absorb this kind of power, but regrettably he was completely unable to draw upon it. It was very simple. Wall's model, or rather cultivation technique, was targeted at virtual child energy, and this power only belonged to the celestial realm and was unique, so it was completely wrong. No matter, since he had already sensed this power, it was equivalent to taking the most important step from celestial king to heavenly venerable, and Ling Han hadn't even become a celestial king yet. As for becoming a heavenly venerable, Ling Han was naturally even more confident. He began to take large strides forward, step by step as if he were walking on flat ground, and in the end he even began to sprint. Because his body had been tempered by virtual child energy, its level was above the regulations, and even surpassed that unique power of the celestial realm. Once he got used to it, he began to erupt. Ling Han sprinted madly. Cell phone reading was even more refreshing. Chapter 24:16. This was a very real threat. Celestial kings of the celestial realm couldn't enter the celestial path, but they could if they really wanted to, severing their cultivation and starting anew. However, there were celestial kings in the celestial path, so the celestial kings here were equivalent to heavenly venerables, invincible. Ling Han laughed. He dared to point at heavenly venerables and scold them, so how could he be frightened by an ascending origin stage? He walked forward. What I hate the most is others threatening me. This is not a threat, the tall man said calmly, his gaze sinister, and his killing intent indeed very strong. He didn't know Ling Han and the others, but these people were too hateful, actually crossing the rainbow bridge so quickly, causing him to lose once. When he was displeased, he would want to kill, and those outside the celestial path. Sorry, he only saw them as prey. Hunyo jumped out first. If you want to fight Nyo's Ling Han, you have to first pass Nyo. She was mainly itching to fight. There was no opponent in the Eastern Celestial Realm at all, and elites were lonely. The tall man couldn't help but be stunned. Hunyo and the Empress were both indescribably beautiful. He could still resist before, but now that Hunyo stood out like this, he couldn't help but have his gaze stolen, his heartbeat speeding up. You still want to kill Nyo's Ling Han, you stinky bug. Hunyo attacked first. Her attack was extremely terrifying, and when her small fist shot out, it was as if heaven and earth were collapsing. The expressions of the tall and short men changed drastically. Though the short man didn't have killing intent, he didn't take Ling Han and the others seriously either. Only when Hunyo attacked did they realize how terrifying their opponents were. No wonder they could cross the Rainbow Bridge in 3 days. Without outstanding talent and strength, how could it be possible? And this was because they didn't see the scene of Ling Han sprinting wildly on the Rainbow Bridge, or they would definitely be scared to death. The tall man hurriedly parried, but he was completely inadequate in front of Hunyo, and was soon completely suppressed. Defeat was only a matter of an instant. This was natural. Hunyo was the Emperor's star. The tall man roared in fury. He took out something that was a bit red like mud, and actually stuffed it into his mouth. Even if you can't win, you don't have to eat dirt, right? Hunyo laughed loudly. The tall man did not reply, but his battle prowess actually soared by many times in an instant. Veins popped up all over his body, making him look like some kind of monster. It was extremely terrifying. Ling Han's eyes involuntarily narrowed. Even if this tall man had gone berserk now, he was still not Hunyo's match, but at least he had the ability to fight back. However, it should be known that Hunyo was the Emperor Star, and this person was only a king tier at most. What the hell was that red thing? It could actually allow a king tier to instantly experience a leap of 2 whole tiers? From a king to an Emperor Star, the increase in combat power was shocking. Humph, Nyo will still beat you to a pulp. Hunyo shouted loudly, her small fists explosively flying out. Sure enough, it was only 100 moves and the tall man was suppressed. Even if they were all Emperor Stars, there was still a difference in strength. Now, Hunyo belonged to a very strong Emperor Star. The tall man was trampled under Hunyo's foot. He tried his best to get up, but he felt as if there was an immovable mountain pressing down on him, and he couldn't move at all. Hee, let's talk things out. The short man hurriedly tried to smooth things over. He was also given a fright. He had never thought that the strength of Ling Han's group would be so terrifying. Even his companion couldn't win even after using his ultimate technique. Ling Han smiled and said, "That red thing, you also have it, right?" The short man hesitated slightly, and sure enough, he took out a red thing from his clothes. It really looked like mud, but it was very slippery and full of elasticity. It was completely impossible to tell what it was. Ling Han took it and studied it carefully, but couldn't sense anything. He thought for a moment, and then suddenly bit it. The short man couldn't help but be dumbfounded, thinking, is this person an idiot? He doesn't even know what this thing is, and still dares to bite it? What if it's something extremely poisonous? Ling Han dared to eat it, so he naturally had a very high degree of confidence. Firstly, the tall man ate it. Secondly, his physique was incredibly astonishing, and he was only a hair's breadth away from Celestial King tier, and could completely be regarded as a Celestial King tier. Thus, he naturally had no fear. He was too curious. Something that could cause a king tier's strength to soar so crazily was not normal. Ling Han's eyes lit up. His body was actually absorbing that unique energy in this heaven and earth. Fuck, this thing was too astonishing, wasn't it? No, wait. Ling Han immediately shook his head. Though his body had absorbed this kind of energy, he couldn't really absorb it and could only use it as a channel. Furthermore, in this process, his physique didn't receive the slightest bit of improvement. If anyone wanted to rely on this to comprehend the first step to the heavenly venerable tier, this was completely impossible. Even so, this was enough of a shock. A red thing that could allow one to borrow the power of heaven and earth. No wonder the tall man's strength had soared so much all of a sudden, just like Ling Han. He was clearly only at the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, but his battle prowess had soared to the level of a first heaven celestial king tier. It was just that it wasn't that exaggerated. Furthermore, this thing was useless after taking it out of the celestial path. Thus, it was only in this place that the power of heaven and earth was so close. Outside of this place, it was out of reach. What made Ling Han even more gloomy was that he couldn't obtain the slightest increase in battle prowess. As for the reason, it was probably because he had already used the higher grade void energy to temper his body, so the red devil earth couldn't have the effect of increasing battle prowess. Hunyo was in high spirits. The more she was forbidden by Ling Han, the more she couldn't forget it. In view of the tall man's killing intent this time, Ling Han didn't plan to stop him. Instead, he told Hunyo to have fun. Once she was satisfied, she wouldn't mention it again in the future. The little girl drew out an iron spear, and a mischievous expression appeared on her face. Then, she suddenly stabbed it at the tall man's buttocks. Ah! The tall man screamed, as miserable as he could be. Ling Han ignored him, and merely patted the short man's shoulder. Oh, that's right, I forgot to ask you guys where you came from. The short man wanted to cry. You guys are too cruel. You guys don't even know who we are, and yet you've brutally abused your companions. In fact, you guys even burst his ass. Just looking at it hurt. We are the subordinates of Tsang Bei Wang. Ling Han smiled. Come, introduce this Tsang Bei Wang to me. In the celestial path, the various celestial kings naturally called themselves kings. Many people, for one reason or another, didn't leave the celestial path in time. As a result, they were trapped here forever, and among them, there were a few with outstanding talent. Most of them were emperor tiers, and after experiencing a long period of time, they naturally had the possibility of becoming celestial kings. In addition, the trapped people would also have children here, and the inheritance would be passed down from generation to generation. There would also be some outstanding geniuses who would become celestial kings. Songbei Wang was the latter. He was born and raised on the celestial path. His parents were disciples from large sects, but they never became celestial kings. On the other hand, he had the aptitude of emperor tiers, and after countless years of bitter cultivation, he reached the peak of his life. Songbei Wang controlled the Rainbow Bridge to enter the key point of the celestial path. If one wanted to enter the vast space of the celestial path, they had to pass through Songbei Wang's territory. Ling Han asked about the power structure of the celestial path again, and finally had a further understanding of this place. In the celestial path, the highest realm of celestial kings was only the third firmament. There was no way around it. It was almost impossible for people who were trapped here to become emperors. It was naturally difficult to become a fourth or fifth firmament celestial king. Chapter 24:17. Songbei Wang was a first heaven celestial king, and had achieved Tao about 7 billion years ago. However, his strength was still quite extraordinary, which was why he could conquer a world and become a king. However, the closer one was to the center of the celestial path, the greater the force, and the stronger the celestial king. It was said that there was an astonishing treasure in the center of the celestial path, and all the great celestial kings wanted to fight for it. Thus, they established their own force, fighting each other and searching everywhere. But until now, no one had obtained this treasure. Ling Han really wanted to know what this treasure was, but unfortunately, the short man was limited by his status and had no way to know such a great secret. Then what is this? Ling Han raised his hand and tossed the red substance in his hand. This thing was very astonishing, actually able to draw on the unique power of the celestial realm. Although it could not be used to temper his body, if he could continuously experience it, it would definitely allow Ling Han to become a heavenly venerable faster after advancing to 9th heaven celestial king. We call this red devil soil, the short man said. How did it come about? Ling Han was more curious about the origin of this thing. Could it be ejected from the core of the heaven and earth? I don't know either, the short man said. He told the short man the truth. This thing was not something rare on the celestial path. Just like alchemical pills and weapons, there were people selling them, and the price was not ridiculously high. At least, ascending origin tiers could completely afford them. Consuming it directly was actually the simplest way to use the red devil soil. It could also be used to build buildings, forming an incredibly sturdy defense. This was also how the red devil soil got its name. Additionally, adding some red devil soil when forging a weapon could greatly increase the weapon's power, but the red devil soil was a consumable. Once it was used up, the weapon would become ordinary. What about the celestial seed? Ling Han asked. The celestial seed is an incredibly precious thing, the short man hurriedly said. At the same time, he showed an expression of envy. The celestial seed can only be plucked and nurtured in one's body. Once taken out, it will become useless. I've stayed at the peak stage of the consummate level of the ascending origin tier for 7 billion years, but still have not collected enough celestial seed fragments. I'm still far from celestial king tier. He shook his head in disappointment. Obtaining a complete celestial seed was an illusory matter. One could only collect broken pieces and use one's body as a furnace to fuse them together. Those who were powerful would be able to cultivate a complete celestial seed. Most of the celestial kings in the world had advanced from the ascending origin tier like this. However, there were also people with heaven-defying luck and heaven-defying strength who directly obtained a complete immortal seed. After becoming an immortal king, their strength would also be world-shaking, far surpassing other immortal kings of the same level. This could be said to be the pinnacle level of the ascending origin tier. Ling Han's heart palpitated with excitement. His parents, Lu Yutong and the others didn't have much talent in the first place, and he didn't have any hopes of them fighting for him. Hence, as long as he could become an immortal king, he wouldn't have to fear the immortal calamity. They could use the celestial seeds condensed from their fragments to refine into celestials to break through, but he, Hunyo, and the Empress were the main force of the battle, so they definitely had to use a complete celestial seed to break through. Otherwise, he would rather withdraw from the immortal path before the deadline of 10,000 years and try again 10 billion years later. If the foundation is not solid, how can we build tall buildings? Let's go to Zhongbei City. Ling Han had the short man lead the way and set off for the territory of Zhongbei King. Hunyo played for a while and felt bored. She clapped her hands and couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the tall man chasing after Ling Han and the others. This trip to Zhongbei City wasn't far. In about half a day's time, a large city appeared in front of them. Ling Han was surprised. In his impression, the cities of the celestial realm were all as large as planets, but this city was far from reaching such a level. Instead, it was more or less the same as the cities of the lower realm, and he could see everything with a single glance. I heard that the cities outside of your city are innumerable times larger than this one, the short man asked. Seeing that the tall man wasn't dead, he felt reassured. He didn't have to worry that Ling Han and the others would kill him to silence him. Ling Han nodded and asked, "Why is the city here so small?" "Because there aren't many people," the short man said, and even sighed. Indeed, every time the celestial path opened, there would be a limited number of people trapped here, but after so many years, they should have multiplied and strengthened, right? According to the short man, this was mainly a problem of fertility. The people here, even if their strength was low, still had a ridiculously low chance of conceiving a child. Thus, the city didn't have to be built too big, or else it would be hard to see a single person within 10,000 miles. The short man led Ling Han and the others into the city. The people here also knew that the celestial path that opened once every 10 billion years was about to open, so the city was also very lively. They all took out their local specialties to exchange for things that weren't here. If they sold them in the future, they would make a fortune. Red devil soil was naturally the most important. Aside from direct sales, there were also various weapons and shields mixed with red devil soil, and the prices were also very high. Strangely, the celestial path didn't produce star stones, so star stones became the item that the locals of the celestial path most hoped to obtain from outsiders. These products made from red devil soil were actually very ordinary in the eyes of the locals. Even if they weren't ordinary, they were only slightly more expensive. It was just like celestial medicines. Although they were expensive, they always had a price tag. But to Ling Han, these things couldn't be seen or bought in the outside world. He didn't mind paying a high price to buy them. In any case, to him, star stones were actually the least valuable thing. The four of them were all making large purchases, and the short man watched them spend star stones like flowing water. He was filled with envy in his heart. This thing was a rare item on the celestial path, and it was also a consumable item that could only be replenished once every 10 billion years. The last thing Ling Han lacked was money. Only when they were almost done with their purchases did they return, satisfied. However, there were still many merchants chasing after them, fighting to shove their goods into their hands. It was really because they had been too extravagant previously that they did not even try to bargain when buying things. This kind of customer was naturally what they loved the most. There was an inn here, and Ling Han and the others had booked a courtyard. They planned to stay here for a while, mainly to understand the matter of celestial seeds. On the celestial path, there were two types of celestial seeds. One type was complete, and one could become a celestial king with just one. However, this thing was extremely rare, and it would definitely grow in extremely vicious environments. Once someone participated in the competition, there would definitely be a bloodbath. Who didn't know that a naturally complete celestial seed was incomparably precious? The battle prowess of a celestial king who relied on it would be a level higher than the first type. The second type was incomplete, and it could appear anywhere. What Ling Han wanted to know was whether there were complete celestial seeds nearby. He asked around, And he really did find out that there was indeed a complete celestial seed about 10,000 miles away from North Songbei City. There was a celestial tree there that bloomed once every few trillion years, and then bore fruit once every few trillion years, and the fruit would only ripen after another few trillion years. All in all, it would be exactly an epic. And the fruit that this celestial tree bore was a complete celestial seed, and there might be as many as 3 to 5 fruits on the tree. Ling Han's heart palpitated with excitement. Chapter 24:18. An immortal tree could bear several fruits, and each fruit was a complete immortal seed. Ling Han needed a lot of immortal seeds, so he was naturally tempted when he heard this news. Even though complete immortal seeds were extremely rare, there were always people who obtained them, and there were also many pieces of information that spread out. For example, the closer one got to the center of the immortal path, the closer the immortal tree would be to the perfect immortal seed fruit, able to create even more powerful immortal kings. If he could obtain a complete celestial seed here, Ling Han did not plan to refine it himself. However, to be on the safe side, he would keep one. If he did not find a better celestial seed near the end of 10,000 years, he would use this celestial seed to break through. It was better than using an incomplete celestial seed. Very soon they set off. The fruit of the immortal tree was about to ripen. Perhaps in 3 years, or perhaps in 10 years. In any case, it would not take long. Half a day later, they arrived at their destination. It was a valley shrouded in clouds and mist. Walking into it immediately made people dizzy. They couldn't tell north from south. They walked out of the valley in a daze. Once, twice, thrice, no matter how many times he tried, the result was always the same. It was like a ghost walking on a wall. Formation. Ling Han and the other 3 were all curious. They tried to decipher it, but the fog seemed to be formed naturally and without any pattern. There was no way to break it. After a few times, they still walked out of the valley. Ling Han couldn't help but feel regretful. It would be great if Wally was here. With his inhuman analytical abilities, he might be able to decipher the fog in this valley. You don't have to waste your energy, a voice said leisurely with a strong magnetism. A young man walked over. He was dressed in white and looked very handsome. He had a lazy smile on his face. Ling Han walked over. Why do you say that? The fog in this valley will only dissipate at midnight every day for 2 hours. You can only enter at that time. Otherwise, no matter how strong you are or how high your realm is, you can only go around blindly and come out in a daze. The young man in the black robe explained. Thank you for your guidance. Ling Han cupped his fists. There was day and night on the immortal path, but the day lasted for 72 hours, and the night also lasted for 72 hours. A day was shockingly long. The outsider raised his eyebrows. Ling Han smiled. How did you get out? The young man laughed heartily. If it wasn't an outsider, who would dare to come here? What does that mean? Was it because this place was too dangerous that the locals didn't dare to come here, or had it been marked as a forbidden area by a certain force that didn't allow outsiders to interfere? I'm Ling Han. How should I address you, sir? Ling Han asked. Because of the other party's reminder, he chose to use peaceful means before resorting to force. Shen Hao. The young man said, Outsider, this is not a place you should be in. Trust me. Ling Han gave an "oh" and said, This place is extremely dangerous. You could say that. Shen Hao thought for a moment and nodded. But the main danger comes from humans. Ling Han understood that the environment here was indeed dangerous, but it should have been occupied by one or even several forces. That was why there was a saying that the danger mainly came from people. I love to fight. The stronger the opponent, the better, he said. Shen Hao's eyes narrowed slightly before he said, Outsider, you're very confident. However, you know too little about this place. You'll be at a disadvantage. Ling Han didn't think much of it. He took out a handful of red devilish soil and said with a smile, Are you talking about this? Shen Hao was surprised. He indeed wanted to say that if an outsider didn't know about the red devilish soil, he would suffer a crushing defeat if he encountered an opponent of the same level or even a level lower. He didn't expect that this outsider would know about the red devilish soil's use so soon after the immortal path opened. He even had quite a lot of it. I didn't expect you to discover the secret of the red devilish soil. He paused for a moment and continued, Come, there's a celestial king elder in your family, right? Celestial kings must have walked the immortal path. Hence, if there was a celestial king behind Ling Han, then it wasn't strange that he knew about the red devilish soil's secret. Ling Han smiled slightly and didn't argue. Did it matter if there was a celestial king behind him or not? In any case, a celestial king couldn't interfere. He continued the previous topic. If we don't leave, could it be that you're going to use force against us? Shen Hao once again showed a lazy expression. I can't be bothered to make a move. However, I'm lazy, but others won't be like this. Ling Han laughed loudly. You're quite interesting. Yet Shen Hao shook his head. Outsider, don't think that you're very strong. I'll give you a word of advice. On the immortal path, our strength is generally stronger than yours. Obviously, Shen Hao was looking at the sky from the bottom of a well. Though the majority of ascending origin tiers were indeed ordinary, king tiers were already very rare after all. Emperor tiers and monarch tiers were naturally even rarer, and emperor stars were definitely as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns. Thus, it was very easy for those on the immortal path to think of outsiders as ordinary ascending origin tiers. If anyone is unconvinced, Niu will beat him into submission. Hu Niu stretched out her small fist and gestured fiercely. She was extremely beautiful and also exuded the innocence of a young girl. This action didn't have the slightest bit of destructive power and would only make others feel that she was cute and pure. Shen Hao couldn't help but be dazed for a moment. Only then did his whole body tremble, and he came to his senses. He shrugged indifferently. In any case, I've already persuaded you, so whether you listen or not is your own business. He yawned, looking like he wanted to find a place to lie down and have a good sleep. Second senior brother, who are you talking to? Someone flew down from the cliff in the distance. This was a woman, and her appearance was very alluring, outlined by her form-fitting red dress. Her eyes swept over, and when she discovered Hu Niu and the other two girls, her eyes involuntarily narrowed. Too beautiful. One was noble, one was pure, and one was seductive. Even she would feel a rush of excitement when she saw them. A sliver of killing intent involuntarily rose up in her. There was actually someone who crushed her in terms of appearance, and it wasn't just one, but a whole three. Shen Hao raised his eyebrows slightly and couldn't be bothered to speak. Outsider. The woman in red swept her eyes over again, and a sliver of a smile appeared at the corners of her lips, but there was a hint of cruelty in it. Outsiders were easy to deal with. If they were killed, then so be it. There was absolutely no need to worry about leaving behind any future trouble. You actually dare to barge in here, you all are seeking death, the woman in red said coldly. With a shake of her hands, there was already a curved saber in each of her hands. Each curved saber was branded with 9 seals, and they were already glowing. She had activated her spirit tool, and this meant that she would not hold back when she attacked. She wanted to kill Ling Han and the others. Firstly, this place did not allow outsiders to interfere at all, and secondly, she was even more jealous of Hu Niu and the other two girls. Thus, she immediately drew her sword. Ugly people are prone to mischief. The Empress sneered. Her steps were light, and her slender waist swayed slightly. She was extremely flirtatious, yet graceful and elegant, making one's heart beat, yet not daring to profane her at the same time. This was a goddess that one could only look up to. The woman in red's aura was greatly weakened, and even her back involuntarily bent down. However, she immediately reacted, and instantly flew into a rage out of humiliation. With a delicate shout, she charged towards the Empress. A red shadow flickered, and she was sent flying back at a speed that was even faster than when she had arrived. Chapter 2420. The Empress humphed softly. Her palms flipped, and multiple power of regulations shot out from her jade-like palms. She herself also turned into the flow of time, one moment in the past, the next moment in the future, so strange that it was impossible to capture. The strength of the woman in red had been greatly boosted under the effects of the Red Devil soil, and because of the Red Devil soil, she was close to the level of being untouchable by all techniques. Thus, it was very difficult for the Empress's regulations of time to affect her, but there was no difficulty in using them on herself. The two of them exchanged blows. Regulations of time lived up to their reputation as the highest level, and were also the main regulations of any plane, so they were incomparably powerful. In the entire battlefield, it was the Empress who was suppressing the woman in red, and the woman in red's counterattacks were all useless, unable to hit her at all. The defeat of the woman in red was only a matter of time, and it would not be long. "Humph, you actually dare to come to our North Blue faction to act violently, how audacious!" With a long shout, two men arrived together, both of their expressions carrying powerful pride. However, when they saw that the woman in red's hair was disheveled, and her fine black hair had turned gray, they both paled in shock. Was this still their 19th junior sister who loved beauty as much as her life? 19th junior sister, how did you? Let me help you. The two men charged out at practically the same time, but bewitching Maiden Ro humphed softly and moved to block them. She angrily rebuked the two of them. "Stand down." She was proficient in the path of bewitching, but she walked the path of a ruler, making others submit, worship, and revere her, and not the kind that would arouse others' lust. Otherwise, Ling Han would not have tacitly acknowledged her existence. With this shout, the two men looked dazed. Their gazes towards bewitching Maiden Ro were at first confused, and then fervent, as if they had met their benefactor of 9 lifetimes, wanting nothing more than to kneel down and worship her, offering their lives without hesitation. Shen Hao's gaze involuntarily froze. These two were both his junior brothers, and their strength had long since reached the peak stage of the ascending origin tier, but that woman was only SOSO, yet she had directly knelt down without a single move. This was completely unacceptable to him. The two men retreated as ordered, yet their eyes were fervently fixed on bewitching Maiden Ro. They only had to wait for an order from her, and they would do anything for her. The woman in red almost vomited blood. "Didn't the two of you say you were going to help me? Were you now?" In a moment of distraction, she was instantly struck by the Empress's series of attacks. The heaven-destroying 9 swords slashed out, and her whole body was drenched in blood. Her clothes were also torn in several places, and she was in an extremely sorry state. The Empress didn't back down after gaining the upper hand. She lightly raised her slender hand, and another gust of wind shot out from her finger. This gust of wind transformed into a frightening sword chi, and was going to slay the red-robed woman. "Have mercy!" Shen Hao hurriedly moved. No matter how lazy he was, he couldn't just watch as his junior apprentice sister was killed. Peng, he blocked this attack, and a shocking flush instantly appeared on his originally fair and clean face. It was as if he was drunk. This was because the Empress's sword chi was too powerful. Though he had dispelled it, it had shaken his chi and blood, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. His face paled in shock. Previously, he had only known that the Empress was very strong, but after receiving this attack, he finally experienced it for himself. No wonder his junior sister was still suppressed by the Empress even after eating 2 mouthfuls of red demonic soil. The Empress's eyes sharpened, exuding an endlessly domineering aura. She wanted to kill a traitor, and there was actually someone who dared to stand in her way, so she would kill them as well. Ling Han smiled and said, "Wife, stop for a moment." Shen Hao, was not a bad person, so it would be a pity if he died. Only then did the Empress give up on the idea. She clasped her hands behind her back, her imperial might and domineering aura spreading out. Bewitching Maiden Ro also giggled and retreated. Only then did those two men seem to have woken up from a dream. They exchanged a look, and could both see the intense shock and lingering fear in each other's eyes. If bewitching Maiden Ro had told them to kill each other just then, they definitely would have carried it out without hesitation. Now, it was uncertain whether they would live or die. When they thought that their lives had been so easily controlled by another, their hearts contracted intensely. Ling Han had just heard those two mention the Songbei faction, and asked Xin Hao, "You too are the disciples of the celestial king Zhongbei?" The red-clothed woman caught her breath and shouted at Ling Han, "Do you too know fear now?" Ling Han walked towards the red-clothed woman, his eyes clear and calm, but there was a naturally oppressive aura that caused the red-clothed woman to feel as if a large rock was pressing down on her chest. Even breathing was difficult, and her complexion instantly became pale. "You're asking for a beating." He moved. Pa! A slap flew over from a distance. His hand rose, and the force behind it had already arrived. With a crisp sound, the red-clothed woman suddenly staggered in retreat. She opened her mouth and spat out a few broken teeth and fresh blood. "Brother Ling, though this junior sister of mine speaks fiercely, she actually does not have any ill intentions. Please show mercy," Shen Hao hurriedly advised, but he was even more shocked in his heart. This group of 4 were all powerful and were completely different from the outsiders that they had imagined. Only now did Ling Han withdraw his gaze and turn toward Shen Hao with a smile and said, "You two are claiming territory and planning to forcibly take over that celestial tree inside? This is the territory of our Blue North bloodline, so the celestial tree naturally belongs to us." One of the men that had been bewitched by bewitching Maiden Ro previously immediately declared to Ling Han. Ling Han chuckled. "Are you playing with me? Who is playing with you?" That man flew into a rage out of humiliation. He was not a 3-year-old child. Ling Han waved his fist. "The treasures of heaven and earth naturally belong to the person with the biggest fist. I feel that my fist is the biggest. Is there anyone among you who is not convinced?" That man wanted to say something, but his mouth moved, yet he could not say a single word. Ling Han's group was too powerful. He and his companion had not even been able to exchange a single move before they had directly knelt down. Now, they did not have the slightest bit of confidence at all. "Brother Ling, even if you chase us away, it is useless." Shen Hao, however, shook his head. "What do you mean?" Ling Han walked over. "Did you see that this mountain fog can prevent people from entering?" Shen Hao pointed at the mountain valley that was surging with fog. "This is the first layer of protection, and after entering, the path is also very dangerous. The closer you get to the celestial tree, the harder it is to approach. Though we have occupied this place, in reality, none of us have actually approached that celestial tree." Ling Han nodded. "I know that. If it was only occupied by others, then it would not be so difficult to obtain the celestial seed, because there was always a possibility that it could be obtained by others. Furthermore, the most difficult obstacle is the celestial tree itself," Shen Hao continued. "I have also heard others say that the celestial tree possesses an astonishing ability to escape, and no power can restrain it. If it is not willing to give the celestial fruit to you, even a celestial king would be helpless." Ling Han naturally would not waver in his determination just because the other had said these few words. He asked Shen Hao in detail, and very soon he had a further understanding of this celestial tree. Where did the fragments of the celestial seed come from? It was the pollen that fell from this celestial tree when it bloomed, or the fragrance of its fruits when they were growing, that drifted with the wind and could be obtained by others. Shen Hao and the others had stayed here for 2 reasons. First, they wanted to obtain a complete celestial seed, but this was too difficult, so they had to settle for second best. They wanted to obtain some of the remnant fruits and leaves that had fallen from the celestial tree. Many a little makes a mickle, and even the incomplete celestial seed could be pieced together into a complete one. Chapter 24-21. In the sky, the sun gradually set in the west, and the bright moon slowly rose. After a long time, the moon was in the middle of the sky, and the mist in the valley suddenly dispersed. "We can go in now." Shen Hao led the way in front, and Ling Han and the others followed behind. The woman in red and the others glared fiercely at the backs of Ling Han and the others, and then turned to leave. They wanted to go back and complain. A few outsiders actually dared to have designs on the celestial tree, and Celestial King Zhongbei would definitely be furious if he knew. Perhaps he would personally deal with Ling Han and the others. It was very strange. Previously, the valley was covered in mist, and they couldn't even see their fingers if they stretched out their hands, and they would walk out in a daze. But now, there was not the slightest bit of mist. Although there was no sunlight under the bright moonlight, there was an elegant whiteness, and the scenery could be seen very clearly. This part of the road wasn't difficult to walk, and Shen Hao walked very quickly. Ling Han and the others naturally wouldn't trust others so easily. Every step they took fell on the ground that Shen Hao walked on, and they firmly remembered it in their minds. After walking for about 5 kilometers, the front suddenly opened up, as if they had walked into a plain. "There," Shen Hao said, pointing at the mountain wall in the distance. Ling Han and the others all focused their gazes over. They could faintly see a tree growing on the mountain wall. It was no more than 3 feet tall, and its leaves were very dense. In the middle of the leaves, there were 5 bright red fruits. The fruits were covered with indescribable veined patterns, but perhaps because they were too far away, they could not clearly see the exact appearance of the veined patterns. Ling Han quickly shook his head and said, "It shouldn't be because of the distance." The Empress nodded in agreement. "We are at most 3,000 meters away from that celestial tree, but we feel that the tree is blurry. This is not normal. When will the fruits ripen?" Hunyo was more concerned about this. Shen Hao thought for a moment and said, "When the celestial tree bloomed and bore fruit, even my master hadn't achieved Tao, and this celestial tree has always been unknown, so no one knows the specific time. But in recent months, we can already smell the fruit fragrance, and according to the ancient records, the fruit should ripen within 10 years. "I'm here," he suddenly said, and immediately sat down cross-legged. Ling Han and the other 3 smelled a sweet fragrance. They couldn't tell what it was exactly, but it smelled really good. It made them feel like they were walking on clouds, as if they had become one with the great path. "This fragrance is coming from the immortal tree. Don't miss it. You can cultivate an immortal seed here," warned Shen Hao. Ling Han and the other 3 were curious. The immortal seed fragments were really everywhere. They continued to sit cross-legged to absorb the fragrance and carefully experience it. All kinds of enlightenment surged in his mind, and in his sea of consciousness, a small bright spot formed, as if it was about to give birth to something. "This is the fragment of the immortal seed. It seems like celestial seeds are very easy to cultivate," Hunyo immediately said. Ling Han also felt that it was strange. At this rate, as long as he breathed in a few more breaths of the fragrance, he would be able to condense a complete immortal seed in a few years. Shen Hao asked, and he couldn't help but be flabbergasted when he found out about their situation. "Could it be that all of you have the legendary immortal physique?" After a while, he couldn't help but ask, "What immortal body?" "Immortal physique is a prodigy that is connected to the great Tao and can easily condense a immortal seed," Shen Hao said. "It is basically impossible for such a person to appear on the celestial path. I heard that only outsiders could possibly have such a monster." Ling Han gave an "oh." This so-called immortal physique should refer to monarch tiers, beings that were destined to become celestial kings. Thus, condensing an immortal seed was especially easy. Through their previous efforts, they had already obtained the recognition of heaven and earth. Condensing an immortal seed and becoming a celestial king was only a process. However, the strength of a celestial king that way was limited, because it was formed from incomplete immortal seeds, so how could it compare to an innately complete immortal seed? When Ling Han explained this to the 3 girls, he also obtained their approval. 3 of them were emperor stars, so it was naturally easier for them to condense an immortal seed, and Ling Han had actually surpassed the category of emperor stars. His evolution index had already broken past 11. They were all nurturing an immortal seed, but this was not a problem. As long as they reached the final step and did not let the immortal seed germinate in their bodies and grow into a celestial tree, it would be fine. They could abandon it at any time and exchange it for another immortal seed. Nurturing an immortal seed could allow them to experience the celestial king's Tao in advance, which was very beneficial for their future cultivation. For example, Shen Hao and the others were also condensing an immortal seed while waiting for the celestial fruit to ripen. If they could obtain it, they would not hesitate to exchange it. Ling Han carefully experienced it. Even an incomplete immortal seed represented the laws of heaven and earth, and could directly understand the essence. Only by understanding the essence of the laws would one have the right to surpass the laws and become a celestial king. Why don't we go forward a bit? Ling Han suddenly asked. Here, many of the fruit's fragrance had been blown away by the mountain wind. Shen Hao shook his head. There's no other way. It's too dangerous ahead, so we can only stay here. My master came here before, but the moment he came, the celestial tree directly burrowed into the ground. So if we want to obtain an immortal seed, we cannot borrow the power of a celestial king. This was quite interesting. Ling Han did not stay where he was in a daze. He immediately stood up and then walked forward slowly. He was not satisfied with just absorbing a little fruit powder here. Since he also wanted to obtain the fruit in the future, then he had to first explore the path clearly, because the fruit might only ripen 10 years later, or it might ripen tomorrow. This celestial tree needed an entire epoch from blooming to bearing fruit to ripen. Around 10 years' time was like a normal person's breath. It was ridiculously short. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. When Ling Han took the 5th step, he suddenly realized that this valley had changed. Previously, the night light was as clear as jade, but now it was filled with an eerie feeling, as if he had suddenly walked into a ghost cave. This was not a feeling. He saw a gust of yin qi rising from under a rock, and very quickly condensed into a skull. Then, it let out a sharp cry, and pounced towards Ling Han. The sharp cry was extremely ear-piercing, as if it was going to forcefully rupture Ling Han's eardrums. Ling Han snorted. The world is bright and clear. How can a demon act viciously? Hurry up and scatter. Pa! That skull immediately exploded. What? Seeing this, Shen Hao's heart could not help but contract. It was not that he had not tried to pass through this place before. He had also faced this skull. Even though he had passed through, he had been in a sorry state, and it had taken him a lot of effort to deal with it. However, Ling Han had shattered the skull with a single roar. The difference in strength was like the difference between heaven and earth. Ling Han did not care if Shen Hao was shocked or not. He continued onwards, and soon, another rock lit up and turned into a sword that slashed towards him. Ling Han punched out, and bang, the sword was instantly shattered. Shen Hao was once again dumbfounded. Back then, he had been forced back by this sword, and he had tried 7 times before he had passed. Ling Han had definitely eaten red devil soil. Otherwise, he would really go crazy. Ling Han strode forwards. Every rock and soil here could turn into a powerful weapon that attacked him, but they were all nullified with a single punch and a roar. He was a super emperor star, and putting aside his body techniques, just in terms of laws, his HP was 4,600. Chapter 24-22. Ling Han walked forward 500 zhang in a single breath, and it was as easy as walking on flat ground. At this point, his speed finally slowed down. The attacks that materialized became more and more terrifying, and they could no longer be neutralized with a punch or a kick. Shen Hao shook his head inwardly. He could also reach that position, but he had already eaten the red devil's oil. Otherwise, around 500 zhang would have been his limit. Xiao, a few figures arrived, and they were all relatively young men. Senior apprentice brother Shin. They first greeted Shen Hao, and then they all looked at the distant Ling Han. He's almost at his limit, right? And I thought he was something amazing, but he's only SOSO. It's already very good that an outsider can reach this step. They spoke one after another, and all of them revealed a strong sense of superiority. In their eyes, it was impossible for Ling Han to advance any further. Senior apprentice brother Shin, why did you bring them in? Someone questioned Shen Hao. Exactly. The others nodded. This was the private property of the Zhongbei bloodline. Although it was almost impossible for them to obtain a complete fruit, just inhaling a little of the fruit's fragrance here would allow them to become celestial kings in tens of billions of years. This was an astonishingly great opportunity. Now that Shen Hao had brought 4 outsiders in, it would naturally affect their benefits, and they were very dissatisfied. Shen Hao only smiled lazily and did not pay them any attention. In front, after Ling Han took a step forward, he saw a large rock glow and actually materialized into a golden rabbit. Xiao, the rabbit leaped up, and 2 rays of golden light shot out from its eyes, and it charged toward Ling Han. Ling Han punched out to meet it. Z, the golden light struck his fist, and dazzling light sputtered out. How stupid is this person? He actually used his fist to resist the attack of the fierce light. When the newcomers saw this, they all shook their heads, expressing their extreme confusion. 500 zhang was a threshold, and after this threshold, the attacks here would become incredibly fierce, especially this kind of golden light, which was filled with terrifying destructive power, and could only be resisted with a pseudo-celestial tool. Ling Han used his fist to attack. Wasn't this seeking his own death? Arrogant. I'm waiting for his fist to turn into ashes. The newcomers were all mocking and ridiculing. This matter had nothing to do with them, and Ling Han was an outsider, so they naturally wanted nothing more than for Ling Han to be chopped into pieces. Golden light filled the sky, but the scene that everyone expected did not appear. Ling Han charged out, his fists were complete and flawless, and there was a glazed light flowing around them as he punched toward the golden rabbit. Bam! The golden rabbit was sent flying, and there was a hole in its chest. The faces of the newcomers twitched, unable to utter a single word. Shen Hao smiled faintly. Previously, he was scared to death by Ling Han. Now that he saw his junior brothers behaving like this, he felt an indescribable sense of satisfaction. I bet he won't make it past 750 meters, said someone through clenched teeth. Nonsense, even Lord Master has said that from 750 meters onwards, that is practically the attack of a celestial king. Which ascending origin tier could block it? Someone immediately retorted. Aside from celestial kings, no one has passed through here, but if a celestial king comes here, the celestial tree will immediately flee, so there is no solution. The Empress finally couldn't hold it in any longer, and menacingly walked over to those people. Shut up! Those people immediately wanted to fly into a rage, but when they saw the Empress's graceful and noble appearance, their mouths opened and closed, but they couldn't say a single word. Ling Han threw over a dozen punches in a row, and the golden rabbit exploded. His feet paused slightly. The golden rabbit's vitality had reached about 4,500 points, and it should be known that an ordinary cultivator at the peak stage of the consummate level of the ascending origin tier would only have 4,300 points, and only Emperor stars could barely reach 4,500 points. Ling Han was a super Emperor star, and that was why he could reach 4,600 points. In other words, this rabbit was enough to make even ascending origin Emperor stars frown deeply. This thought only flashed through his mind for a moment, and Ling Han continued to advance. Another unremarkable azure rock lit up, and turned into an azure wolf that roared at Ling Han. Shio shio shio. With this roar of the azure wolf, multiple azure blades of wind shot out from its mouth, slicing towards Ling Han. Ling Han didn't retreat, but advanced instead. His fists punched out repeatedly, incredibly domineering. Peng, peng, peng. He domineeringly charged in front of the azure wolf, and gave it a good beating. It was only a dozen or so punches, and this azure wolf exploded, turning back into an azure rock. Strangely, the azure rock wasn't the slightest bit damaged. Ling Han was curious and picked up the azure rock. After thinking for a moment, he turned around and picked up the golden rock from before as well. When everyone saw this, they all felt an urge to smack their foreheads and cry out to the heavens. They had never seen such a person who even wanted to pick up stones. These were not treasures at all, and they could only display their might in the valley. Meanwhile, Ling Han started to play around with these 2 stones curiously. However, no matter how much he circulated his power, these 2 stones didn't react at all, as if they were stubborn rocks. Even if they can't display their might, smashing people with them isn't bad either. Ling Han thought to himself as he put these 2 stones away. He was extremely excited, and he wanted to collect even more stones. He continued to advance, and more stones took form, attacking Ling Han. The further he went, the fiercer the attacks became. By the time he was about 750 meters away, the stone's HP had already shot up to 4,600. In other words, even a super emperor star would reach its limit here. Ahead, there were still 250 meters before he reached the end of the valley. If he went any further, he would reach the celestial tree. Shen Hao shook his head. Even if he ate the red devil earth twice in a row, this was the limit. No one could eat 3 mouthfuls in a row, or their strength wouldn't increase at all. Instead, they would immediately die. The others were filled with anticipation, hoping that Ling Han would continue forward and be killed. Ling Han paused slightly before raising his foot and landing. Wang, a boulder that was as tall as 9 meters, suddenly came to life, transforming into a stone golem of the same height. Ping, 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 it stomped on the ground, causing the earth to tremble. It strode towards Ling Han, a terrifying, ferocious aura spreading out. It was as if it was a primordial beast from ancient times, capable of destroying everything. Ling Han didn't dare to be careless, and he activated his most powerful ability. Body technique. He punched out without holding anything back. A terrifying scene appeared. The stone golem was directly smashed apart by a single punch. Damn it! Shen Hao and the others were all petrified, and countless thoughts churned in their hearts. They couldn't understand. Ling Han's battle prowess had clearly reached its limit, so why had he suddenly become so powerful? His battle prowess was almost at the Celestial King level. Could it be that he just ate the Red Devil Earth? Someone asked in a trembling voice. Impossible! The others all shook their heads. If Ling Han hadn't eaten the Red Devil Earth, how could he have become so powerful? He was even more powerful than them after eating the Red Devil Earth. I've heard people say that even though most of the people in the outside world are ordinary, there are some shocking geniuses, someone said leisurely. For example, we're clearly stronger than our peers, and we're called kings. When the others heard this, they all felt quite pleased. This title wasn't bad, and they were very satisfied. But above kings, there are 2 more levels, the person from before said. What? The others were stunned. They weren't the most supreme geniuses. Chapter 24-24. Ling Han naturally wouldn't agree to anyone's request. There were too many people in his clan who needed immortals, and he wouldn't complain even if he had 100 immortal fruits, let alone now that he only had 1 extra. Seeing that Ling Han wasn't willing to agree, everyone's eyes were filled with hatred, but no one dared to act out. The difference in strength was too great. However, some people had already left. They were going to complain to Celestial King Cangbei. Why should the immortal seeds in their territory be obtained by outsiders? They wanted to ask the Celestial King to act, and force Ling Han and the others to harvest the ripe fruits, and then give them to them. This was even better. Shen Hao sighed. Brother Ling, you guys are too high profile. You're finding trouble for yourselves. What's wrong? Ling Han asked with a smile. You guys have proven that you have the ability to harvest immortal fruits, and no matter how powerful you are, you can't compare to a Celestial King. Shen Hao shook his head. My junior brothers and sisters will definitely ask Lord Master to intervene. At that time, you guys will only be helping others, and even your lives will be in danger. Ling Han was surprised. Why did the Shen Hao always side with outsiders? This kind of personality was rare. Brother Shen, you really are a very strange person, he said with a smile. Shen Hao also smiled. This is the kind of personality I was born with. It can't be changed. Ling Han nodded. However, Brother Shen doesn't need to worry for us. Since we've come to the celestial path, we naturally have made preparations. Putting aside his terrifying physique technique, he hadn't used the few origin energy of heaven and earth. It was best to use them to intimidate low-level celestial kings. Shen Hao naturally wouldn't believe him. The leap from the ascending origin tier to the celestial king tier was far, far too great. There was absolutely no one that could accomplish it. However, since Ling Han was determined to do so, he couldn't be bothered to try and persuade him further. This was also his personality. Ling Han and the others sat down, absorbing the fruit fragrance of the celestial tree and nurturing the immortal seeds in their minds. Time passed day by day, and finally, other people arrived in the valley. These were outsiders. They had entered Songbei City much later, but they still knew about the red devilish soil and the existence of the complete immortal seeds. Thus, they also came here, trying to try their luck. If he really obtained the complete immortal seed, that would be reaching the heavens in one step. Master Ling. Greetings to Master Ling. Greetings to Master Ling. After discovering Ling Han, everyone hurriedly came over to greet him. A 5-star adept, even more awesome compared to an initial stage immortal king. Who would dare to be disrespectful? Only now did Shen Hao know Ling Han's identity, and he came to a sudden realization in his heart. No wonder Ling Han was so full of confidence, and didn't even fear celestial kings. So it turned out that he was a supreme being that could refine celestial king-grade medicinal pills. With such an identity, even immortal King Songbei would have to show some respect to him. Unless immortal King Songbei could guarantee that he could capture Ling Han without leaking any news, countless immortal kings would definitely attack him. Such a great alchemist was really too useful. More and more people came to the mountain valley, and they were basically king tiers and emperor tiers. Ordinary ascending origin tiers were still struggling on the Rainbow Bridge. It would already be very good if they could pass through in a month or two. As such, with their strength and the help of the red devil soil, Shen Hao and the others were unable to stop them and could only let them in. Thankfully, there were only a few hundred people, so the impact wasn't too great. There were many people who didn't believe that this mountain valley would be so difficult and insisted on walking on it. The result was naturally that they tormented themselves greatly, and a few people almost died. There were many who had suffered before, and everyone naturally learned their lesson. However, there would always be newcomers who felt good about themselves and insisted on giving it a try. Ling Han sat down calmly. Though he could only absorb some fruity fragrance now, which contained a shred of the celestial seed's fragment, there was actually no difference in quality from a complete celestial seed. Thus, he studied the celestial seed in his mind. His grand cosmic everlasting physique activated, and he accelerated the flow of time on himself. When a complete celestial seed fused with a cultivator, it could grow into a celestial tree, and that would be a first heaven celestial king. And when the celestial tree bloomed and bore fruit, and the seed grew again, that would be a second heaven celestial king. This cycle repeated 9 times, and that would be a 9th heaven celestial king. Every time a celestial seed grew, bore fruit, and became a seed again, it was a kind of transformation of regulations, and it would develop in a more powerful direction. By now, Ling Han was already qualified to touch the threshold of celestial king tier. Thus, he studied the fragment of the celestial seed, attempting to understand the celestial seed and the celestial king tier from a more fundamental level. Unfortunately, this celestial seed in his body was too incomplete at present, and the information he obtained was really only bits and pieces, so he couldn't learn anything from it. Unexpectedly, Celestial King Songbei didn't appear all this time. It was unknown whether it was because he was too busy, or because he couldn't be bothered to suppress a few ascending origin tiers, or perhaps the time was not ripe yet, and he would only appear when the fruits of the celestial tree had completely ripened, and force Ling Han to pick the fruits and hand them over. In the blink of an eye, 7 years had passed. At some point on this day, a fruity fragrance wafted over, but it was as if these celestial fruits were right under their noses, and the fragrance was astonishingly strong. The celestial fruits have ripened. Instantly, everyone's eyes reddened. This was a naturally complete celestial seed, and if one used it to become a celestial king, their battle prowess would be at least 3 times stronger than other celestial kings. 3 times? But though they were only 3,000 meters away from the valley, such a long road was like a natural chasm, and there was absolutely no way they could cross it. They could only stretch their necks, hoping that a fruit would drop down, and then be blown by the mountain wind, and roll to their feet. Just at this moment, a frightening might spread over, and they saw a person slowly walking out of the fog. This was too astonishing. Under the blockade of the fog, someone could actually walk over. Master! Shen Hao and the others all knelt down and respectfully paid their respects to this person who walked over. This was Celestial King Songbei. No wonder only celestial kings could ignore the blockade of the fog. Ling Han also walked over and saw that this celestial king was only in his 20s. He was handsome and exuded a vigorous heroic spirit, making people admire him. Celestial King Songbei's body was entwined with extraordinary colors, but it was only one color, and this very clearly told everyone that he was a first heaven celestial king. When a celestial king appeared, there would be a fragrant fragrance wafting between heaven and earth, and this meant that celestial kings were people who had received the love of heaven and earth, unlike heavenly venerables, who would be struck by lightning the moment they came out, and if they made a move, they would be targeted by heaven and earth, and it was not impossible for them to be killed. The red-clad woman and the others followed behind Celestial King Songbei, and they followed his every step with extreme respect. The outsiders also paid their respects. Although some of the factions behind them had second heaven, third heaven, or even stronger celestial kings, at this time and place, they still had to show due respect. Celestial King Songbei raised his head slightly. He had received the worship of all living beings, so he naturally would not care about such reverence. However, his gaze shifted, and he looked at Ling Han and the others. It was very simple, only the four of them did not kneel, and it was too sudden. "I heard that you're a 5-star alchemist?" Celestial King Songbei asked, his tone rather polite. Ling Han nodded. "That's right." A 5-star alchemist did not need to lower his head in front of a low-level celestial king at all. Moreover, his own battle prowess was not much weaker than a first heaven celestial king. Combined with his terrifying defense, it was not certain who would win if they really fought. Celestial King Songbei smiled. "Are you interested in staying and helping me?" Chapter 24-25. Celestial King Songbei extended an olive branch to Ling Han. If it was outside, there would definitely be many people who would mock Celestial King Songbei for overestimating himself. A mere first heaven celestial king wanted to recruit a 5-star grandmaster. Wasn't he afraid that the guest would bully the host? But here, the strongest celestial king was only a third heaven celestial king, which imperceptibly lowered the level of 5-star grandmaster. Thus, Celestial King Songbei's recruitment was not considered abrupt. Ling Han cracked a smile. "Thank you for your favor, Brother Songbei, but I only came here to become a celestial king, and have no intention of staying long on the celestial path." As long as he walked the celestial path, he would also be a first heaven celestial king, and added with the title of 5-star grandmaster, he would definitely be much stronger than Celestial King Songbei, so he did not need to be humble in front of the other. Moreover, his present strength was also infinitely close to Celestial King, and if they really fought, it was unknown who would emerge victorious. Celestial King Songbei couldn't help but raise his eyebrows slightly. There was no existence of 5-star grandmaster on the celestial path, so 5-star grandmasters and celestial kings only existed in legends. Now, a mere ascending origin tier directly called him Brother Songbei, which made him feel a wave of displeasure. This was the celestial path, and no matter how powerful one's background was outside, they could not interfere at all. However, being able to become a celestial king, he naturally was not someone who would easily change his expression, so he said calmly, "All right, since Grandmaster Ling's ambition is not here, I will not force you." He paused slightly. "However, this celestial tree belongs to my Songbei bloodline, after all. Since Grandmaster Ling has chosen it, I naturally will not be reluctant to part with it, so I will give Grandmaster Ling a fruit." He only said that he would give Ling Han one, but as for the remaining 4, that would have to be approved by him. Ling Han was not afraid and said, "Natural treasures should be obtained by fated people and those with strength, right?" When everyone heard this, their hearts beat like drums. Was Ling Han going to publicly shed all pretense of cordiality with Songbei King? Even in the outside world, the status of 5-star grandmasters was respected, but face was also given by cultivators. Even if celestial kings had to be polite, that was only on the surface. If celestial kings really wanted to be polite, the celestial king could ignore them. After all, this is a world where martial artists reign supreme. This was the immortal path. First heaven immortal kings were extremely powerful existences. Yet, Ling Han actually dared to refute immortal King Songbei so directly. This naturally made everyone feel uneasy. Let's put it this way. If Celestial King Songbei really killed Ling Han, which Celestial King on the Immortal Path would bother Celestial King Songbei for a dead 5-star Grandmaster? Sigh, this guy still treated the Immortal Path as the Celestial Domain. The title of a 5-star Grandmaster was not so useful on the Immortal Path. The outsiders shook their heads, while the Songbei bloodline revealed looks of anger. Even Shen Hao revealed a solemn expression. Immortal King Songbei was a shrewd man. He did not lose his temper after being rebutted. Instead, he looked at Ling Han coldly and said, "Young man, you are very outstanding. You have achieved outstanding achievements in alchemy at such a young age, and you are also unrivaled in martial art. You will definitely have great achievements in the future. However, if you show off too much, you won't be able to live until then." This was the threat of an immortal king. A terrifying aura circulated, and everyone felt a tightness in their chests. It was indescribably uncomfortable. Ling Han, on the other hand, did not care at all. His physique was so strong that it was even close to the level of a celestial king. It was just an aura, and it wanted to overwhelm him? I'll still say the same thing. Treasures of heaven and earth belong to those who are fated, he said in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing. Celestial King Songbei chuckled, but he reached out with his right hand and grabbed at Ling Han through the air. His source power activated the rules and turned into a huge golden hand. Runes flashed, which was the materialization of the great Tao of heaven and earth. The Celestial King had made his move. It was just a small impact, but the sky trembled as if this part of the world was about to collapse. Ling Han's expression did not change. A Celestial King of the first heaven was really nothing in his eyes. He had killed many of them, and not just once, but 3 times. The strongest Celestial King among them had even reached the 5th heaven. Ling Han unfolded his rage fist and circulated the terrifying power in his body. His fist arrived at his heart. Bang! A violent punch blasted toward the huge golden hand. Seeing this, everyone was so shocked that they spat out their tongues. This was the standard case of a mantis trying to stop a chariot. A mere ascending origin tier actually wanted to fight a celestial king head-on? How arrogant was he? "You're courting death," the red-robed woman and the others said coldly. This was especially so for the red-robed woman. She had suffered too many losses, and her black hair could never recover. There were also a few more wrinkles on her face, so she naturally hated Ling Han and his group to the core. The outsiders also shook their heads. From now on, the Eastern Celestial Realm would return to the situation where there were no 5-star Grandmasters again. Just as everyone was immersed in various emotions, Ling Han and Celestial King Songbei also truly clashed. A terrifying gust of wind whistled. This was the collision of the strongest powers of the Celestial Realm. Celestial Venerables had exceeded the scope of the rules, and were not included. Endless brilliance was dazzling, and everyone felt as if they had become blind. They could not see anything, but their ears were filled with rumbling explosions, showing how terrifying the present scene was. But after a short while, their ears had all gone deaf, and they could not hear anything. Because these explosions were too terrifying, exceeding the limits of what they could bear. Everyone was bleeding from all orifices, and felt as if their hearts were beating like drums, about to explode. Most people only felt uncomfortable, but there were also a few people who revealed indescribable shock. If a celestial king made a move, shouldn't he be able to capture Ling Han in an instant? Regardless of whether it was capturing him alive or killing him, it would definitely only be a matter of raising a hand. But now there were endless explosions, and the battle was still continuing. What did this mean? Celestial King Songbei still hadn't captured Ling Han? How was this possible? That was only a mere ascending origin tier. Even if he had the title of a 5-star Grandmaster, and Celestial Kings had to be polite to him, it definitely did not mean that his strength could really be on equal footing with Celestial Kings. At least 15 minutes later, everyone suddenly found that the terrifying pressure was gone, and the vision in front was slowly recovering, and the deafness was also improving. The dust that filled the sky settled, revealing two figures facing each other with their hands clasped behind their backs. Celestial King Cangbei and Ling Han. Hiss. Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded, and even wanted to hold their heads with their hands, shouting that it was impossible. Ascending origin tier rivaled a celestial king, the biggest joke in the world. It was something that they didn't even dare to dream about, but it was happening in reality. Who could believe their eyes? I must have seen wrongly. This can't be happening. It's fake, it's all fake. After a brief silence, there was a tsunami-like clamor. Everyone was speechless, as if hoping that someone would remind them that all this was just a dream. The woman in red was even more dumbfounded. She actually offended such an elite. If Ling Han really wanted to kill her, then so what if it was Celestial King Cangbei? He was not afraid at all. Only then did Shen Hao know what Ling Han meant when he said that he was prepared. His strength was strong enough to rival a celestial king, so he naturally had no fear. Your strength is unbelievably strong, Celestial King Cangbei said, his tone still calm, but with strong curiosity. Cell phone reading more refreshing that you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.